All right, Shalom Israel. Shalom, all the brothers and sisters out there checking us out on YouTube and social media. And also, shout out to the brothers that are in class, brothers and sisters. Shalom to you all, brothers and sisters that are in class and those that are online. The water for watching. And we hope that you are getting edified through the knowledge that we're bringing out. The water for all the help with the. We got apocryphers that came in. We got Bibles that came in. We got notebooks that were given and donated. So if you got materials that you want to donate, please do reach out. We can use these materials. These materials are necessary. We do run through a lot of paper, a lot of pens and apocryphers, Bibles, Josephus, Flavius Josephus. We do use those a lot. So if you see these and you want to donate, please donate. The water for we're not gonna read it today. So shalom to everybody, and let's go ahead and get started. I know it's a lot of reading, and just kind of want to get into it. So first and foremost, let's start off with the scripture, Amos chapter 5 verse 21. Let's go to the scripture first and foremost. Amos chapter 5 verse 21. You should be on it.
Amos chapter 5 verse 21.
And also, not to be forgotten, all our brothers and sisters out there, isbhpk, San Antonio, Houston, Virginia, New York, Guatemala, London, California, Albuquerque, New Mexico. Shout out to all you brothers as well and sisters as well. For we know how, in order to keep a body going, it is most definitely work involved. But through the Most High Christ, all things are possible. So keep up the fight, keep up the good work, and let's go ahead and get that scripture. And somebody else can hit that AC too.
Amos chapter 5 verse 21. I despise their feast days.
You got to read it like the Most High is emphasizing it, because that's exactly what he's saying. It's not that often where you hear the Most High explaining how he feels about something or someone. Read that again.
I despise your feast days.
The Most High said he what?
I despise your feast days.
He said, I hate and I despise your feast days. All the things that you consider sacred, all the things that you consider holy, all the things that you consider special, all these feast days that you go spend money on, and you make sure that you prepare large courses of meals and extensive menus, and you celebrate these feast days. He said, I hate them. So if anybody want to know, first and foremost, how the Most High feel about this Thanksgiving holiday, the Most High said what?
I despise your feast days.
Go ahead.
And I will not smell in your solemn assembly.
And they said when you come together and you pray and you're holding hands at the table, and you got all the bacon and the ham on the table, you got all the pork on the table, you got the chitlins cooking, you got all the stuff that Israelites cook, tamales, all the pork cooking on the table in the oven, hog head, all the fat back, salt pork, collard greens with bacon in it, bacon fat, all these things. The Most High said, I'm not smelling that. He said, I hate that, and I'm not smelling that, meaning I'm not taking the acknowledgement of it, and neither will you get a reward from it as well. Read on.
Verse 22. Though ye offer me burnt offerings.
It says, though you offer me burnt offerings, and you think that by coming together, putting these fat beasts, these fat killed pigs with pineapples and cherries sticking through them with toothpicks, you think the Most High is taking honor and knowledge of it because you cooked it, or your household cooked it, or you made it. You got the fattest turkey you can find at the grocery store. You think the Most High is taking honor to it and because you cooked it. So the Most High is supposed to recognize that. The Most High he's not honoring that. He's not in that feast. Read on.
Though you offer me burnt offerings and your meat offerings, I will not accept them.
He said he will not what?
I will not accept them.
The Most High is not accepting of these things. So a lot of our family gave us family tradition. And because they gave it to us, they expect us to keep it. What the Most High is wanting us, especially those that have knowledge, that are in the know, to make a start and find line between right and wrong, righteous and wickedness. And the Most High is not with this. And that leads us to our next scripture in Mark chapter 7, verse 9. Let's read that. He said, I would not accept it. It's unacceptable. So no matter how good you think it is and the time that you put into it, the Most High is not acknowledging these feast days, these so-called holidays that have been created by man that has nothing to do with the Most High. Neither did the Most High ordain these holidays. All right, so we know in Leviticus 23, the Most High gave us the holidays that he says that we should follow. But let's go ahead and read this right here.
Mark chapter 7 and verse 9. And he said unto them, full well ye reject the commandment of the Most High.
He said, but a lot of, you tell our people that they're not, the Most High is not in no Thanksgiving, and he's not about no Thanksgiving dinner. You almost offend them. You almost offend our people because they feel like, you know, how dare you speak against something that we've been doing for a long time.
This is sacred.
Yeah, our family been doing this. We come together every holiday. This is when family's supposed to come together. This is what they get offended by this. People will, our people especially, because we've been indoctrinated. We get offended when you don't show up, you don't want to come participate, hold hands, and sit at the cookout.
But you ain't part of the family no more?
And they try to make you look like an outcast to the family, the black sheep of the family too.
Right.
Because you don't celebrate it.
Yeah, you the oddball, right?
Yeah.
Right. Read on.
And he said unto them, full well ye reject the commandment of the Most High.
He says 100,000%. You'll reject the commandment of the Most High and do what?
That ye may keep your own tradition.
You'll make every type of opportunity and sacrifice to make sure you come to the events. You're at the events. You sacrifice. You think the Most High is acknowledging this? He says no, man. The Most High said, listen, no matter what work you put into it, he said, what I'm looking at is, did I ordain this commandment or this is something that you're keeping? He says that you put down the commandments of the Most High to do what?
That ye may keep your own tradition.
That you may keep your what?
Own tradition.
You keep your own traditions. And so when it comes down to putting the Most High's traditions on a scale versus the traditions you've learned in this society, the Most High's traditions are always going to be the one that you throw away. And the one that means the most to you is the one that you've adopted in a society that brought you into the captivity, that enslaved your forefathers and your foremothers and made them work till sun up to sundown until they died. When you look at America was brought into action by what's called indentured servitude, by poor Europeans looking for hope outside of England and Europe. And for the ones that could afford the tickets, they came over here on ships. They bought tickets, but the majority of them were sponsored by somebody, and the majority of them were worked off as indentured servitude. And we're going to go through that as well. We'll have a whole day to break that down. But what the Most High is showing is, we'll rather keep this man-made holiday that was given to us by our oppressors more than we'll keep a holiday sanctified and ordained by the Most High in Christ. So we got to look at this holiday and examine it and examine the roots of it. And that's what we want to do today. We want to look at the origins. Why is Thanksgiving so special in America? Why is Thanksgiving such a date to be praised, acknowledged, and for you to go spend your hard-earned money on, to go sacrifice an animal that the Most High said I don't have nothing to do with, neither do I want to smell it, and I reject it and I don't accept that offering. So what is this day then about? So, we got to look at how it's been given to us. As early as we can remember, from kindergarten and pre-K, you get your hand, and you take your hand, you put on a piece of paper, you cut it out, and then you tie it to a little band, and then you put the hand to a little piece of paper band around your head, and what did you make? You're what?
Turkey.
I'm a turkey or I'm an Indian. I'm an Indian. Either I put it on the side and I'm an Indian, I put it on the front, I'm a turkey. Or I put it on the back, I'm a turkey. So from the beginning of inception of elementary school, they're prepping you to begin a history and a tradition that you got to celebrate Turkey Day. You got to celebrate where the Pilgrims met the Indians, where the Pilgrims had dinner and lunch with the Indians. So we're gonna really explore this and find out the truth behind this and when this came into action. All right. So if you got a pen and paper, write this down. If not, you can always rewind the class. So the first time that this was made, as far as most recently, it was during the Civil War that Abraham Lincoln instituted the Thanksgiving holiday, and it wasn't his idea, but he used it as a tool because it was during the Civil War. He thought it would unite people better. It would unite the country. He was trying to unite the country. So it was during the Civil War that the Thanksgiving holiday was ordained and put in public service. All right, but 20 years leading up to the this holiday being actually enacted as law, a woman by the name of Sarah Joseph Hale in 1846. 1846. So 1863, Lincoln made it a holiday. 1846, Sarah Joseph Hale was writing letters to all those constituents in Congress to make this a holiday. All right, she had been writing. She was a school teacher. Matter of fact, she's the one that created the nursery rhyme, "Mary Had a Little Lamb."
Oh wow!
For anybody that know that nursery rhyme, her fleece was white as snow. That same woman that made that nursery rhyme is the same woman that was pushing Congress to enact Thanksgiving as a holiday. All right, and also we got George Washington going into the 1700s. In 1789, he made a proclamation to make Thanksgiving a holiday. In 1789. Now this woman, Sarah Joseph Hale, she was reading from earlier sources. The sources that she was reading from came from a book called The Chronicles of the Pilgrim Fathers of the Colony of Plymouth by Alexander Young. I'll say it again. It was a book that she read about the early founders of America. And she pulled this information out about the unity of when the Indians and the Pilgrims had dinner together. And she said, since this was one of the first earliest known contacts made through history that we can recollect about the Indians and the natives coming together to eat, we're going to go ahead and push this and make this as an actual Thanksgiving holiday. This book is called The Chronicles of the Pilgrim Fathers of the Colony of Plymouth. And it was in this book is this book is, you can find this, it was written from, it's bits and pieces of the early founding fathers of America, those early pilgrims that landed in Plymouth. So it's a book that has letters from them that you can find where they talk about this event. Now we're going to actually read pieces from this book right now about this situation that she got the story from. Remember, she's the one that was pushing it to Abraham Lincoln, but she got the story from previous writings that was put together by a writer named Alexander Young in 1841, who was putting together all the scripts and letters of the founding fathers, or the early settlers, I should say.
What year was the time period?
This was 1602 to 1625, is when the letters were written. Those letters were compiled in a book in 1841 by Alexander Young. All right, so we're going to read one of the stories from one of the first settlers that landed in Plymouth by way of the Mayflower in the 1600s. Yes, sir.
Could you say again the year that it was compiled into a book?
It was compiled into a book in 1841. All right, but the letters were written from 1602 to 1625. There was, about a 23-year collection of letters that was put together in one book. You can actually find this book online. But we're going to actually just read a couple of excerpts just from where she got it from to where she was trying to push this to Abraham Lincoln to actually become a national holiday. So let's go ahead and read this down. I'm going to have you read this. This is a letter. It's chapter 15 of this particular book, of this same book. Right here.
A letter sent from New England to a friend in these parts, setting forth a brief and true declaration of the worth of that plantation, as also certain useful directions for such as intend a voyage into those parts. Then this rest?
Yeah.
Loving an old friend, although I received no letter from you by this ship, for as much as I know you expect the performance of my promise, which was to write you unto you truly and faithfully of all things. I have therefore at this time sent unto you accordingly, referring you for further satisfaction to our more large relations. You shall understand that in this little time that a few of us have been here, we have built 7 dwelling houses.
He said they built 7 dwelling houses. Go ahead.
And 4 for the use of the plantation, and made preparation for diverse others. We set the last spring from 20 acres of Indian corn, and sowed some 6 acres of barley and peas.
So they sold, the natives showed them how to sow 20 acres of Indian corn and 6 acres of barley and peas. So they were surviving at this time. But it wasn't cracked up. When you actually read the book, they were starving prior to that. And we're going to get into that too. But go ahead.
And according to the manner of the Indians, we manured,
which means to cultivate.
Okay. We manured our ground with herrings.
So the Indians actually showed these early settlers how to survive. Because the herrings are these small little fish or shads. These little big fish that you catch with a net and you use them for cut bait or you use them to catch bigger fish.
Yeah.
So they showed them how to actually put 3 herrings per 1 pile of corn, 1 mound of corn. So for an acre for 1 acre they would use 1,000 little fish, because the fish was the best actual food and mineral source for the actual crops. So they showed them how to take three little herrings and put it in 1 stalk of corn, and it made your crops yield 10 times fast. Go ahead.
Which we have in great abundance, and take with great ease at our doors.
He said, all you gotta do is walk outside and you catch fish. Go ahead.
Our corn did prove well, and the Most High, and God be praised, we had a good increase in Indian corn, and our barley indifferent good. But our peas not worth the gathering, for we feared they were too late sown. They came up very well and blossomed, but the sun parched them in the blossom.
So they lost some of their crops because it got burnt. Go ahead.
Our harvest being gotten in, our governor sent 4 men of fowling, that we might, after a special manner.
He said 4 men of fowling, meaning they sent 4 men to look for fowls, for ducks, geese, turkeys, chickens, whatever they could find. So he said 4 men of fowling. They're looking for fowls. Go ahead.
After a special manner, rejoice together after we had gathered the fruit of our labors. They 4 in 1 day killed as much fowl as with a little help beside.
It says them 4 men in 1 day killed enough to feed their whole company. Go ahead.
Served the company almost a week.
So it just shows you how plentiful the animals were when they got here. Go ahead.
At which time, amongst other recreations, we exercised our arms.
So they were sport shooting. Go ahead.
Many of the Indians coming amongst us, and among the rest, their greatest king, Massasoit, with some 19 men, whom for 3 days we entertained and feasted.
He says, so for 3 days, because they had a good crop, the Indians showed them how to cultivate the land. They didn't know how to cultivate the land. Remember, the first settlers that started the colonies, they damn near they was eating each other already. They had resorted to cannibalism. We had brought this out in the previous class. So if it wasn't for the Indians showing them how to plant crops using fish to yield better crops, they wouldn't have made it. So they're celebrating, they're feasting with the natives for 3 days. Go ahead.
Which they brought up to the plantation and bestowed on our governor and upon the captain and others. And although it be not always so plentiful as it was at this time with us, yet by the goodness.
Yeah, so he's saying that was the first time that this woman read through these letters that she found from this book, that she said, well, this is Thanksgiving. That is not Thanksgiving. Neither did they call this Thanksgiving. So this is a time that they actually feasted together. But she chose, that's why the class is called Thanksgiving, the American Coverup. Because they wanted to highlight this particular event and say this is the event where Thanksgiving started. And that is not the event where Thanksgiving started. We're going to get to that event through class. But first we had to dispel what the lie is.
Yeah.
What is the lie that we've been taught that this is Thanksgiving? That when the Indians and the Pilgrims ate together. That actually happened, but neither did the Pilgrims nor the Indians call it Thanksgiving. There is a time in history, a few years later down the line, when they did feast and they called it a Thanksgiving. But this is not it. But this is what America wants you to believe. This is what America wants you to put in your mind, pass down to your kids, that this is what it was about. They took one moment in history, highlighted it, and called it Thanksgiving, but neither the Pilgrims nor the Indians called it Thanksgiving. All right? So we had to first show you what it is that you have been taught and you've been holding on to, and you've been seeing our people so going broke for to celebrate, traveling across state countries to visit each other and spend all this kind of money on food for a day that the Most High don't ordain anyway. But that's the lie. All right? So we got to show you the lie first. So now that we got the lie, let's get to early America before these settlers even got here. So because you have to understand that Europeans had already been here, that because they say the Pilgrims landed on Plymouth Rock, that was the beginning of America. No, it was not. Spain had a 100-year head start on the English before the English ever arrived. They already had a 100-year head start. So we want to go into showing how Spain, what type of stronghold they had in the Americas, and also why did the English want to come and participate so badly in this newfound territory? You know. So well, let's go ahead and go to. I got another page right here. We're going to read this real quick. This is from a book called The Elliott Tracts. So if you can find this book, go get it. It's called The Elliott Tracts. The Elliott Tracts is a book written about how the Pilgrims studied the Indians. They studied the North American Indians when they were here. They studied their culture. They studied their belief system. They studied their ceremonies. They studied their traditions. They studied their diet. All right. So this is called the Elliott Chronicles. So now we're going to go ahead and go to the Elliott Chronicles and read. Hold on one second. Let me get it. We're going to read how the English viewed the Spanish and how the Spanish were already dominating in America. So let's read this right here in the Elliott Tracts. I want you to read the highlighted portion. The highlighted portion right there.
Plain dealing, in which he complained of.
Yeah.
All right. It says, in which he complained that no church in Massachusetts Bay had sent anyone to learn the Indian.
So the English were making noise about the Spanish pulling all the gold and getting wealthy out of America. They saw Spain rise above all the European countries within 100 years of finding America. From when Christopher Columbus got to America, it only took them 100 years, and they dominated Europe. So the English, they started finding fault with the Spanish. They said, what was some of the reasons that they said, we don't like what y'all are doing in the New World? They said what?
That no church in Massachusetts Bay had sent anyone to learn the Indians.
Go ahead.
Language, or to instruct them in the religion.
Nobody was instructed. Nobody instructed them. Go ahead.
It says right here that says this lack of missionary zeal.
Go ahead.
Also contrasted dramatically to the efforts of Catholic priests in the Spanish and French colonies.
So they were looking at, okay, well, we're supposed to start a better colony. The English said we're going to start a better colony than the French and the Spanish, because they were all reading one source of material. And I asked my Willa to bring it. I don't know if he had it. Anybody had the Bartholomew de las Casas, the brief account of the destruction of the West Indies? Anybody got that? All right.
Do we got it in the office?
I don't think we got it in the office. Say it again.
Definitely.
It's not an expensive book,
I can get
but
it online.
yeah, it's not an expensive book. But go get that book. You need this book because all historians knew about how the atrocities that the natives suffered over here in the Americas behind the hands of the Spanish, and the gruesome tactics that they did to colonize the Americas. It's gruesome. The book is gruesome. It's hard to read because it's so gruesome. Every chapter is gruesome. Cutting open the pregnant women's stomachs with swords. The Spaniards were brutal. The conquistadors were brutal. Letting the babies fall out and then letting the dogs eat the babies. Practicing with their swords. You could also read Conquest of America by Todorov, where the way they practiced with their swords to see, the way they could tell how sharp their swords were is they would sit natives down, whether it's Incas, Mayas, Aztec, Toltecs, whatever they found, they would sit them down in a creek, and they would run by them with their swords, and how many heads they can take off in one swipe would tell them how sharp their sword is, based upon how many heads they could decapitate in one swing. So when you read about the Spanish and how they dominated and mutilated and dehumanized the entire population of the Americas, the British said we could do it a little bit better. We're better than the Spanish and the French. The French were no different. They were no different. Yes, sir.
What's that book called?
The book is called A Brief Account of the Destructions of the West Indies by Bartholomew de las Casas. And the English, prior to coming to America, they had been reading this book for 100 years prior to them being interested in the Americas. But they saw the wealth that America was generating. Let's go ahead and read that.
It says, who have been proselytizing among indigenous peoples for more than 100 years.
So the Spanish had a 100-year head start on the English, and it didn't sit well with the English. Go ahead.
Who had already left a long record of their accomplishments.
Go ahead.
England, belated embrace of imperialist expansionism, was a source of economic anxiety.
It says these people saw how wealthy the English saw how wealthy the Spanish got, and it caused them economic anxiety. They got envious of the Spanish, but they had to use an excuse to try to come over here and intervene within the New World explorations. And the excuse that they used was they're not teaching the people the Bible. They're just exploiting them out of their money. Read on.
As well as proto-nationalist embarrassment at being beaten to the New World by the most of its European neighbors. Internal disputes among the Spanish about the objectives and tactics of their conquest in New Spain.
Now the English had something to say against the Spanish about their tactics. They're using brutal tactics, so we don't agree with that. We'd be better suited as leaders of the new people, of the new world, because we wouldn't be so gruesome. Read on.
However, allowed England to take rhetorical advantage of its late start by arguing they now had a chance to do it right.
He says they wanted a chance to do it right. We're going to be good masters in the new world. We're going to be better masters than the Spanish. So they wanted to take an opportunity to get over here because they saw all the wealth that they accumulated in a short amount of time. In a short amount of time, Spain just exalted high above all other European countries, them and Portugal, because Portugal had a grip on the African slave trade with the Arabs. So both Portugal and Spain dominated in wealth and prop and riches and resources because they had a foothold and they had a monopoly on the new world. All right. So go ahead and finish that, Daria. Go ahead.
The black legend of horror and atrocities committed against the Indians by their conquistadors became an important motif in English writing about the exploration and settlement of British North America. See Malby, 1971.
All right, so they knew about this exploration, and how did they know this? Go ahead and read this for me, Marwana.
What part?
Read page 7 on American Slavery, American Freedom, page 7 at the bottom right here. Start right here. Yeah.
The whole thing right here.
Yeah. Right here. In the rest of Spanish America.
All right. Chapter 7. In the rest of Spanish America, the story was much the same. The natives were reduced to a species of slavery or serfdom and declined in numbers catastrophically. In their place, the Spanish brought in slaves of other regions, specifically Africa. As the story spread through Europe in the wandering pages of the Spanish chronicler Peter Martyr, and in the withering pages of the Dominican friar Bartholomew de las Casas.
That's the book we're talking about. The Bartholomew de las Casas. All of Europe was reading this book. They was looking at, because that friar wrote and chronicled all the atrocities that he was witnessing that the conquistadors was doing to the indigenous population, and it got back to Europe. So they had a problem with the way it was done, but they just wanted in on the whole game anyway. They wanted in on the money. Go ahead.
God. It added new dimensions to the traditional European image of Spanish cruelty. Mid-century Englishmen were already experiencing what they took to be a taste of that cruelty at home.
So they were saying, well, we can relate to the cruelty of the New World. So we want to help them out. That was the lie that they spake. So you had certain individuals like Sir Walter Raleigh and Sir Francis Drake that took explorations to the New World to witness what the Spaniards were looking at. And the Spanish understood that the British was there to spy out on their new liberty and the new wealth and resources. Go ahead and read this right here down here.
Sir Walter Wright published in 1596.
Sir Walter Raleigh.
Sir Walter Raleigh published in 1596 his discovery of Guyana, which he called a mighty rich and beautiful empire.
You had Spanish Guyana and British Guyana in South America. Go ahead.
Directly east from Peru, toward the sea, lying under the equinoctial line. Its capital was the great and golden city, which the Spaniards call El Dorado.
Now we know El Dorado is also known as the city of gold. So we know that's something that they gave that name to, because they got wealthy, they got rich when they hit up the South Americans. Go ahead.
And the natives Manoa, and for greatness, riches, and excellent seats, it far exceeded any of the world, having in 1595 sailed up Orinoco 400 miles in quest of it. He says, on both sides of this river we passed the most beautiful country that ever mine eyes beheld.
So this is an Englishman witnessing what the Spanish had already landed on 100 years prior. They already had 100 years head start. This Englishman is writing reports back to Europe saying, man, this is the most beautiful place I've ever seen my eyes, and my eyes has ever seen. Go ahead.
Plains of 20 miles in length, and grass short and green. In diverse parts, groves of trees by themselves, as if they had been by all the art and labor of the world, so made on purpose. And still, as we rode, the deer came down feeding by the water's side, as if they had been used to a keeper's call. I never saw a more beautiful country, nor more lively prospects. Hills so raised here and there over the valleys, the river winding into diverse branches, and plains adjoining themselves without bush or stubble. All fair green grass, the deer crossing in every path, the birds towards the evening singing on every tree with 1,000 several tunes, the air fresh with a gentle casterly wind, and every stone that we stopped to take up promised either gold or silver by his complexion.
It says every stone we picked up had a complexion of gold or silver. So this is what the English got a chance to witness what the Spanish had landed on and dominated and controlled. So as these reports started getting back to Europe, it started making the lust of the Englishmen thirst to get in on this wealth, to get in on this money. So the motivation began to be inspired to kick up an exploration and send explorers to the New World. Now, the Spanish knew that the English were nothing more than just spies. They knew that. Let's go ahead and read this right here.
The last part right here too.
Yeah, go ahead. You finish that.
This is for health, good air, pleasure, and riches. I resolve it cannot be equaled by any region, either in the east or west.
Man, it said no matter if you go to China or if you go to the India, or no matter in Europe, India, or China, he said the quality of life in this place cannot be equal. There's no equal to this place.
It's great.
Now the Spanish understood what the British were doing. Read this right here.
Okay.
Page 11.
Page 11 in the book. Just how far Drake intended to go with the alliance is impossible to say. For he never said himself. The Spanish authorities in Panama, however, had no doubt.
It said the Spanish authorities in Panama, they understood the mind of the British explorers. What did they say?
We hold it certain.
He said we hold it for certain that what?
They reported that the principal design of these English is to explore and study this land, and what strength there is in it, in order to come from England with more people to plunder and occupy.
So they were on to this notion that the English were just pirates, and they sent spies. Sir Francis Drake was one of these spies.
Wow.
Sir Walter Raleigh was one of these spies. Matter of fact, he even admitted it that he was a spy. Go ahead and read this right here. Read this part right here.
From right here?
Yeah. There's no doubt that denying that Sir Francis Drake was a pirate.
And read, continue from the.
Yeah, then finish the back part.
Copy. There is no denying that Francis Drake was a pirate, and that the enterprise he conducted 4 years later in Panama was highway robbery, or at best hijacking.
He was a hijacker. Go ahead.
But it was on the scale that transforms crime into politics.
So it's a white collar crime. Ain't no petty crime. Go ahead.
Nearly half a century later, Drake's friend Walter Raleigh, waiting trial in the Tower of London, put the case with his usual succinctness. Riley had admitted to the Lord Chancellor of England that he would have taken the whole Spanish treasure fleet on the high seas in a recent voyage.
So they were pirates. Go ahead.
If he could only have found it, why then, said the Chancellor, you would have been a pirate. Oh, replied Riley, still regretting the lost opportunity. Did you ever know of any that were pirates for millions?
He said for millions. He said when you steal millions of dollars, you're no longer classified as a pirate. This is the English mind frame right here. You're no longer classified as a pirate when you steal millions. Go ahead.
They that risk for small things are pirates. If a man can steal an empire, he becomes not a thief, but an emperor.
He becomes a what?
But an emperor.
He said when you steal it, well, that's a whole different thing. When you steal on the level that I'm trying to steal on, you're not a pirate no more. You become an emperor.
Wow.
This is the mindset of the English, and they were declaring this mind frame because they saw what the Spanish had a hold of, and they wanted in. They wanted in on that wealth. The English will give us the idea that this Thanksgiving is about harmony and about peace between the Pilgrims and the Indians. No, they saw opportunity, and they wanted in on this opportunity, and they had been wanting in on this opportunity prior to. That's at least 60. I mean, that's at least 30 years before the Mayflower ever touched down in America. They saw opportunity. They saw wealth. Finish that.
Come. If a pirate captures a large enough prize, he may be transformed into a statesman.
He said, I'm no longer a pirate, I'll be a statesman. I'm a political person.
He's special now.
I'm special now, beyond just the petty. I'm not a petty criminal.
Public figure.
I'm a public figure. Yeah, so when you commit white collar crime on a large scale, you're not classified the same as these small people, man. I'm not a petty criminal anymore. I'm an emperor. Scriptures tell us that in Ecclesiastes 10 and 8. Read that, Ecclesiastes chapter 10, verse 8.
Ecclesiastes 10 and verse 8. Ready?
Yep.
Because unrighteous dealings.
He says, because what?
Unrighteous dealings.
They understand this. Because unrighteous dealings, the English were well aware of this. Read on.
Injuries.
Injuries, what else?
And riches got by deceit.
Go ahead.
The kingdom is translated from one people to another.
That's how people come into power. Europe understood the recipe. There's only one way that they were going to become in power. They had to take what they wanted, and they had to justify the claim behind their theft. So the Spanish just didn't hide it. They didn't hide the fact that they were there for gold. They didn't hide the fact that they didn't care about the people. They didn't hide the fact that whoever stood in their way was being mutilated and murdered. And they didn't care if you called them the devil, because they understood what they were there for. The British tried to cover up and make it look pretty and innocent. Oh, we're here to preach the Bible. We want what they call this utopian society.
Right.
This utopian society, let's read about this. This is what they envisioned behind what would happen if we got to America, unlike the Spanish, who had 100-year head start. What would we do when we're in that position of power, and we'd be ruling these people? How would we do this? So that mentality was known as a utopian mentality. Let's read this right here.
I saw YouTube.
Right here.
So,
Yeah, right here says Sir George Peckham, right here.
okay,
Right here at the bottom.
got it.
This is American Slavery, American Freedom, by Edmund S. Morgan, and we're at the bottom of page 22. Read that.
Sir George Peckham, who intended to sponsor a special community within the colony.
So he said, I'm going to sponsor a community in the colony, so I'll pay for everybody to get there. These were indentured servants. Early American settlers had no money, they was broke. They got to America by a sponsor. So they had to work 7 years, and after 7 years they would get anywhere between 3 to 10 to 50 acres of land. If you paid your own ticket, you get 50 acres of land. If somebody paid your ticket for you, they get 25 and you get 25. These were debts.
Consignment, very much.
It was consignment, and it was a terminable debt, meaning it wasn't a lifelong debt like a slave. A slave had a 99-year term, or till you died. But these Europeans, these early settlers, they were on a 7-year contract. These were indentured servants.
They had debts.
They had debts. They came over here, worked off their debt. They got an acre. Then on that acre, they had to grow 1/5 to donate to the colony, and the rest they keep. Go ahead.
Who intended to sponsor a special community within the colony, believed that the Indians,
He said he believed that what?
so soon,
He said we don't have to do it like the Spanish. We just don't have to go kill everybody, murder everybody, and cut heads off, and dash little babies' heads against a stone. He said we don't got to do that. Throw people off the cliff and burn them at the stake, burn them alive. He said we can be better than that. He said what?
so soon as they shall begin but a little to taste of civility.
He says when they taste what it means to be a civilian, of civility, go ahead.
Will take marvelous delight in any garment, be it never so simple.
So they'll love wearing our clothes. These Indians will love putting on our clothes, putting on our shoes. They'll love the way we dress, because they'll be civilized. Read.
And the demand for the trappings of civility would turn them from the indolent manner of living in which they allegedly gathered from the land only what the ground of itself doeth naturally yield.
Now the natives were not North American Indians. Gad, the tribe of Gad, was not wasters. They actually ate this meal called kokimi. nokaki. That's what they call it, nokaki. It was actually, you take corn and you roast it on a fire and you pound it into a powder, and then you put it in a bag, and then you just reconstitute it with water, and you only ate two tablespoons a day. And they survived off that for 3 to 5 days with a little pouch of dried roasted corn ground into a powder that you mix with water, and you mix it with water, hot or cold water, and you reconstitute the corn, and that was enough to give them strength to go for 3 to 5 days.
Is that similar to like cornmeal?
Yeah, it's like cornmeal, but dried roasted cornmeal. Imagine corn being roasted, dried, and then ground into a powder, and then put the powder in a bag, and you eat 2 tablespoons a day. And that's all they ate. They would go for days off 2 tablespoons of cornmeal.
This similar. There's the Native Americans in Mexico. I think same message.
Tamo mujeres.
Yeah.
Is that like somebody rationing or something like that? What they was doing?
No, they just didn't waste.
They weren't excessive.
They weren't excessive. They weren't greedy. They just weren't greedy hogs. Like they had to gorge themselves and eat a whole Texas-sized plate. You know.
Yeah.
They had a little bitty pouch that they held on their stick or their necklace, and they just took a little two teaspoons of this cornmeal a day, and they'd be good for the whole day. And then they go hunt for 3 to 5 days and go get the rest of their food. They only ate what they felt necessary. They didn't waste a lot. But what you're saying is the Tamo mujeres,
right?
the running women is what it's called in the mountains of I think they're in Guadalajara.
Well, they're the best runners, bro. They can run for miles and miles and miles, but they do it off of corn beer.
Corn beer. Yeah.
They ferment corn, turn to a beer, they drink it, and they can run for like
The race that they do every year is 100 miles.
yeah.
And old women do it too, and they do it in sandals. They're called the running women. I think they're either in Guadalajara or they're right across the Texas border in the mountains of what's the state south of us by the Kickapoo Casino?
Leon?
No, on the other side, like Torreon, Coahuila.
I forgot.
The
Yeah,
mountains of
Coahuila.
Coahuila. Yeah, they're in the mountains of Coahuila, and they run. They got a 100-mile race they do traditionally every year, and they go off that corn beer that Davia's bringing out.
Yeah, they get the calories from the beer.
Yep.
And
They get the
ferment
carbs.
it. Yeah, and they just 100 miles, no problem, bro.
No problem. 100-mile running. So he said, but the English looked at the natives as being indolent people because they didn't eat a lot.
What's indolent?
Just like
Slow.
barbaric, bold, it's just a slander. Go ahead.
God. When instructed by the English, they would understand how the 10th part of their land may be so manured and
Cultivated. Go ahead.
cultivated and employed, as it may yield more commodities to the necessity used of man's life than the whole now doeth.
So they said we can make more. We can show the natives how to make more money off of their crops. So not only just feed themselves, but actually make a business out of it. Because the white man look at everything like a business. He doesn't look at. That's why I put a barcode on every single grapefruit, apple, onion, tomato, garlic, pepper. Everything got a damn barcode on it. Because everything's about $1. Everything's about profit with the white man. Read on.
As a result, they would by little and little forsake their barbarous and savage living.
He says they'll forsake their barbaric and savage living. Go ahead.
And grow to such order and civility with us, as there may be well expected from thence no less quantity and diversity of merchandise.
So they're about merchandise. Go ahead.
Than is now had out of Dutchland, Italy, France, or Spain.
Go ahead.
It was a blueprint for utopia.
So the English said we're not going to be barbaric like the Spanish and just kill you for your land. We're going to be civilized and show you how to be civilized gentlemen. We're going to come in and you're going to want to just serve us as a people. You're going to want to adopt our lifestyle. This mentality is in America, English America is called a utopian mentality. In Greek history, that's called Hellenization. And he's going to prove it. Read on.
Wow, that's crazy. English benefactors living side by side with Indian beneficiaries, both enjoying new comforts.
So he's showing you who's the giver and who's the receiver. We'll be over them. They'll receive from our hand. Read on.
Both enjoying new comforts in peace and prosperity, with the cannibals expelled to some outer region. Indeed, if we turn to Utopia itself, we find that Sir Thomas More had envisioned nothing better in his ideal state when he described the utopian manner of colonization.
So the British had a utopian manner of colonization. They had a style of colonization that they thought was going to be easily implemented in a new world. Read on.
They enrolled citizens out of every city in Utopia and on the mainland nearest them. Whenever the natives have much unoccupied and uncultivated land, they found a colony under their own laws. They join with themselves the natives if they are willing to dwell with them. When such a union takes place, the two parties gradually and easily merge and together absorb the same way of life.
He says they'll merge together. This great melting pot, they're going to merge together and they're going to assimilate their ways of life. Go ahead.
Absorb the same way of life and the same customs.
They're going to get the same customs. They'll get our customs. They'll get our way of life. They're going to get our manner of living. Go ahead.
Much to the great advantage of both peoples. By their procedures, they make the land sufficient for both, which previously seemed poor and barren to the natives.
So what does it sound like? Go to 1 Maccabees chapter 1, verse 41. What does it sound like? 1 Maccabees chapter 1, verse 41.
1 Maccabees 1 and verse 41. Moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people.
Doesn't this sound familiar? Isn't this the Greek white man way? This is why when you look at white civilizations and culture, they always want you to assimilate and adopt their way of living. They always want you to come in and cast off what you believe in. For the Japanese man, take off your kimono, or that's what it's called, that little dress, the robe. Take off your kimono and put on a business suit. You know, wherever you're from, the Chinese man, take off your little gi and put on a business suit. You from Africa, take off your head wrap, your scarves, put on a business suit. We want you to adopt our way of living. The white man hasn't changed. And he thought the natives was going to just adopt this same system, this utopian manner of colonization. But the Greeks had been doing the same thing 1,500 years before the British.
Yeah.
He said the letter from Antiochus to the whole colony to do what?
Wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people.
And isn't that the American way? One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Isn't that the idea?
It's a poetic way of saying it.
The Edomites, but
That's all it is.
Right.
that's what they do with the EU. Like, it's the same thing all over the place.
Right. It's their ideal of what colonization should look like. You should put down what you believe in and find out how we live and adopt our culture, the American culture, or the British culture, or the utopian culture, or the Hellenistic culture. Go ahead. Or the Roman culture.
Our way is better.
Right. Go ahead.
Verse 42. And every one should leave his laws. So all the heathen.
That's it.
They always want that.
They want you to put down your laws and pick up their laws. That's why they protect their laws. They don't want you to institute what you believe in. You have a problem. You don't get Kanye and Kanye Wested if you put you
Blackballed.
you get blackballed if you go against their way of life. Read on.
God. And everyone should leave his laws. So all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king. One more.
Yeah, go ahead.
God. Yea, many also of the Israelites.
Now that's the problem. A lot of our people, even back then, still want to put down the Most High's way of living, put down the commandments, and pick up the white man's culture. And that's what's about to happen tomorrow. A lot of our people are going to be putting down the Most High's commandments to pick up the utopian manner of civilization, the Hellenized thought process, or the Westernized thought process, or the Americanized thought process. I'm going to pick up some turkey, and I'm going to pick up some holiday feasting, but I'm not looking at it from the Most High's perspective. This is what the Europeans did. This is what the Greeks did. This is what Romans did. This is what every white civilization has ever done, was to get you to cast off what you believe in and to adopt their way of living. They always want this. Read on.
God. Yea, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion.
And this is the goal of the nations. We know this also in Psalms 83. Somebody read that 1-5 real quick.
Psalms chapter 83, verse 1.
Go ahead.
Everybody there?
Yeah, 1-6.
It reads, Keep not thou silence, O power. Hold not thy peace, and be not still, O power. Verse 2. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult.
Go ahead.
And they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, Come, and let us cut them off from being a nation.
It says the way that we cut you off from being a nation is to get you to put down what you believe in and adopt our way of life. Adopt our culture, adopt our lifestyles, adopt our mannerisms, adopt our music, adopt our dress code, adopt our laws, our ceremonies, our customs, our traditions, our language, our speech. Read on.
They have said, Come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more
and that's
in
why,
remembrance.
and that's why Kanye's catching hell. That's why Kyrie's catching hell.
Yep.
They don't want anything close to you getting back to your roots. They don't want you connecting to who you are to your identity, to your nationality. That's the last thing they want from you. Read on.
Verse 5. For they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee.
They said they're what?
They are confederate against thee.
Go ahead.
Verse 6. The tabernacles of Edom.
Who's the main players in this confederacy?
The tabernacles of Edom.
And who-
Different branches of the Caucasian race,
God.
so-called European race. The different branches, the tabernacles, meaning what?
Dukes.
The Portuguese,
Different.
the English,
The English,
the Spanish,
Caucasian.
Spanish, the French.
the French.
The
These are the
Dutch.
tabernacles, the houses.
God.
This is the family lines.
Russian.
Exactly.
God. And the Ishmaelites.
Ishmael don't like it too. They want you to be Muslim. So you got these nations that are confederate that want you to pick up their language. They love when you Muslim. They love when you assalamu alaikum. They love it, but they hate it when you shalom. They don't like that because they know you're a direct enemy against their belief system. So they'll let you be a Christian. They'll let you do anything you want to do, but just don't be who you are. And that's what the nations understand this, and that's why they're behind an attack of any uprising for anybody that's trying to get back and reconnect with their roots. All right. So let that go, and let's go back and finish this where you at, my woman. Come.
The inhabitants who refuse to live according to their laws, they drive from the territory which they carved out of for themselves. If they resist, they wage war against them. They consider it.
If they resist, they do what?
Wage war against them.
If you don't want to be a part of their culture, if you don't want to assimilate with their
Utopian
customs,
society.
this utopian manner of colonization, if you don't agree with westernization, if you don't agree with Hellenization, if you don't agree with colonization or imperialization, if you don't agree, they do what?
They consider it a most just cause for war when a people which does not use its soil but keeps it idle and waste, nevertheless forbids the use and possession of it to others who by the rule of nature ought to be maintained by it.
He said, we're better keepers of the ground anyway, so you don't deserve to have your land. So it's only fair that we take your land by force.
There you go.
So you really have, you really don't have a choice. Either you adopt the mannerisms of the nation that's in control, or they're gonna wage war against you to do so. Really don't have a choice. But they're, like the scripture might want to just pull, their idea of convincing you is through an idea that we're better leaders, better suited to lead you as a people. All right. But ultimately, what they wanted was a piece of what Spain possessed. And I'm going to prove that right here in America 1750 on page 51. Go ahead and read this right here. Up to the time.
Up to the time the Royal African Company was founded, the slave trade to the colonies of the English North American mainland was negligible.
It was what?
Negligible.
It says, so the English got in late on the slave trade. They got in late on colonization of the New World. They got in late on the wealth that the Spanish and the Portuguese was stripping out of the Americas. Read on.
Although during the first half of the 17th century, Dutch New Amsterdam, the chief North American slaving port, was thriving after the founding of the Royal African Company in 1672.
So even still, when they got here in 1620, the Mayflowers got here. The Pilgrims in particular got here. The British had already been here prior to the Pilgrims getting here. The Pilgrims were just a different sect of religious people prior to the other businessmen that were seeing enterprise in Virginia. That colony had already been started in 1604. So 15 years before the Pilgrims got here, the British were already experimenting with colonization in the New Americas. All right, go ahead. And somebody look up this name right here. Go ahead.
It says the slave trade to the English mainland colonies began to grow, but the freedom boom began after the 1713 treaty.
Now look up this treaty. It's the 1713 treaty of what?
Utrecht.
Utrecht. Spell it.
Utrecht. U-T-R-E-C-H-T.
Somebody read what that treaty is. This is what allowed the English to get into the slave trade. They couldn't get in. They were barred from the slave trade and the wealth that Spain and Portugal was experiencing, except they signed this treaty right here. What was this treaty that they signed? 1731 Treaty of Utrecht.
13, yeah.
The Peace of Utrecht. You want the conditions or you just want the overview?
Just overview.
The Peace of Utrecht was a series of peace treaties signed by the belligerents in the War of the Spanish Succession in the Dutch city of Utrecht between April 1713 and February 1715. The war involved 3 contenders for the vacant throne of Spain and involved much of Europe for over a decade. You want the conditions?
All right. Yeah, the conditions.
The conditions, these are the terms agreed to the treaty. All French forts in the northwest, the region covered by all the rivers that flowed onto the Hudson's Bay, were surrendered to the British.
It says all the French forts from the Hudson Bay, we know that's New York. It says down that flowed downward, they were going to be surrendered to who?
To the British.
Go ahead.
France agreed to pay the British Fur Company in the North America and the Hudson's Bay Company for losses they suffered during the war.
All right. So that allowed the British to get into the slave trade, because the Spanish monopolized the slave trade, and what they did was the Spaniards were shipping slaves, but they wanted somebody else to do the dirty work. They were just into the mining of the gold and the silver and the extracting of the resources and the wealth and the planting of the cotton, the emeralds, all the stones that came out of the Peruvian society, the Incan society, Central American society, the Aztecs, the Mayans, the Mayan society. They didn't want to do the dirty work. So what they were doing was outsourcing the slavery to the British white man. They outsourced the slavery, and they said, "Well, you go. We'll let you participate in bringing slaves to the other side, but you can't sell them without our certificates." What you got?
I was trying to ask, who was the Jacobite Party in England? Because I'm looking it up. I don't want to assume it was the Israelites during that time. Because the reason why I say that is that same treaty. It says in marked the end. It says the treaty recognized Queen Anne as a legitimate sovereign of England and officially ended French support for the claims of the Jacobite Party to the British throne.
I'm not sure what the Jacobite Party was, but we're going to get into that on this next part. Not this part, because keep in mind, prior to the Church of England being established, the Church of England was British. I mean, Catholic. Right, in the 1500s, they went from Catholic to being a Christian society. And this is when they started enforcing Christianity on the Protestants, and the Protestants said, we don't want none of it. We want to separate, and the separatists from the Protestants became what the so-called Pilgrims are today. So now, obviously, there must have been some fuss about who's in control, because there was also a Jacobean revolt as well. It wasn't just a Jacobean party, but there was a Jacobean revolt in history as well. But we'll get into that too. But it may have something to do with who was the successor over the throne after the switch of coming from Catholicism to Christianity.
Is King James' son, was that Stuart? King James II?
No, Philip. He had 9 kids, but the only one that was supposed to take the throne was Philip.
Okay.
That was set to take the throne.
Okay.
All right, but the Pilgrims were the Protestant separatists that didn't agree with the laws that were set. It was illegal to practice anything besides Christianity during the time of King James in England, during the start of the Church of England. It was illegal. So if you practice any other religion, you would be punished, fined, or put to death. And so the Protestants, they didn't agree, and within the Protestants, the group that separated from the Protestants were known as the Separatists, which became also known, the Separatist Protestants became known as the Pilgrims that we know that founded America. So they were a rebellious outcast of people that didn't agree with the laws of England, and neither did they want to be tried for crimes. So they escaped and went into the Dutch Netherlands for about 12 years, and then they couldn't survive in the Dutch Netherlands, so they said, we're going to go to the new country where them Spanish been at, that we've been reading about, the new colony that we've been reading about for the past 100 years from the conquest of America, or the De las Casas writings. So they wanted so they did come over here to escape religious oppression.
They would have been looked at as heresies.
Heretics, yeah.
Yeah, heretics.
Yeah. So they didn't want to get tried for that. So this treaty that the English signed with Spain allowed England to get into the slave trade. Now, they weren't allowed to sell slaves, even though they did it anyway, but they were just allowed to go catch them from the west coast of Africa and bring them to the new land, and that was it.
They were transported.
They were just a transporter. That was it. That's what this treaty kind of opened up.
They were supposed to relinquish them to the Spanish when they got them across, but they didn't.
They were, yes, they was just a contract. You were just supposed to come up, and you weren't supposed to make no money. You get paid for the job, but you weren't allowed to sell the slaves themselves. You just got paid for going to get them, bringing them over here to the New World. And that was this treaty opened the door up for English slavery. They was 100 years behind.
So the movie, there's a popular movie, Amistad, where you see that fight between like the English and the Spaniards, how the Spaniards owned and or put their name on like the ships.
Oh, they had all the ships, the fleets, the armadas.
Fleet, yeah, all of that.
Yeah, the Spanish ruled the seas, and all the wealth coming in and out of the Americas. Drake and Sir Walter Raleigh, they set up agreements with the Cimarrons, which was the West African tribes that broke off and rebelled against and insurrected against the Spanish and got freedom. They made a league. The British made a league with the Cimarrons to exploit the Spanish, because they knew their routes. They knew their trade routes. They would take a boat on the backside of Peru, up on the backside of Panama, on the opposite side of the Pacific. I mean the Atlantic. They would bring the gold up to the Pacific, and so they knew their routes. So the British came in, pillaged the Spanish gold treasure ships with the help of the Africans that insurrected against the Spanish. So the British knew this. So the British were smart. They were two-time dealers, man. You know what I'm saying? They were double dealers. So they knew how to hire the Indians, and they knew how to hire the Africans to fight the French and the Spanish. Right? But so this is how they got into the slave. This is what opened the door for England to get into slave trading. Right here. Go ahead.
And it says, the Royal African Company in 1672. 72. The slave trade to the English mainland colonies began to grow, but the great boom began after the 1730 Treaty of Utrecht, in which England won Assentio, the monopoly,
which was a license.
the monopoly of the Spanish slave trade, which the Spaniards, who did relatively little slave trading for themselves, awarded to others.
So that it was just, they outsourced the contract to bring the slaves over. Now the British wasn't allowed to sell the slaves, just go get them and bring them. But any sales in the New World belonged to Spain and the Queen. All right. So
They couldn't enforce it though.
no, they couldn't enforce it. They didn't have the manpower to enforce it. They didn't have the military to enforce it.
It is basically economic.
So now you have a two-headed monster being created in America. You have these pilgrims that is trying to escape religious oppression. That's saying that we're not going to be as violent as the Spanish when we get to the New World, but the natives will love us and they'll love to be civilized and adopt our culture. Now you got these other Europeans at the same time. You got a two-headed monster coming to America. You got these other Americans that are just the what this book right here calls no, it's not this one.
The ones that were already here 15 years prior.
Hold on, let me get the book real quick. Let me get it. I want to bring this book out real quick. Let me get this book. You can read that again, though, yeah, one more time.
So what, brother?
You can read that one more time.
Read it again.
From this book, right?
Where we stopped at?
I think you was in that.
Yeah, read that one more time.
White trash.
Yeah.
What page was it, bro?
It was page 71.
Page 71. It says right here. It says, the monopoly of the Spanish slave trade, which Spaniards who did relatively little slave trading for themselves awarded to others. It seems appropriate that the guinea, a coin identified with luxury trades in Britain, and until recently the standard unit of price for elite goods, took its name from the Guinea coast. The slave trade had a large and incalculable part in the prosperity of the 18th century England. Wow.
All right.
As the lush profits from growing sugar and selling slaves spilled over into banking, insurance, textiles, and heavy industry.
All right. So then you got a two-headed monster coming to America. You got these so-called Puritans that are looking for religious freedom, that's swearing to be God chosen and God given, and then you got these other people coming to America, and this is a book called White Trash. I recommend getting it. It's called White Trash. It's 400-year untold history of class in America, and it shows you the early settlers, that these settlers were known as the offscoring of Europe. Offscoring is basically excrement. Excrement is crap. These people were hookworm. It says these were the people with 1,000 hookworms. These people had so much lice when they came over here on the ships, that the ships, they had to and you can find that in here too, that they had so much lice when they were coming to America that the lice had to be scraped off their skin. They were crawling all over their skin. They were full of lice and they were full of hookworms. So you had a population of degenerates, and which this book calls them clay eaters. They eat clay and they were full of hookworms. The people with 1,000 hookworms and the clay eaters. So, they were also called Andrew Jackson's crackers. We'll get to yeah, we'll get to this book too. I mean, so now you got delinquent. Here it is right here. The pedigree of poor white trash right here on page 136. Everywhere they are just alike, possess pretty much the same characteristics, the same vernacular, the same boorishness and the same habits everywhere. Poor white trash. This was written by by Daniel Hudley, 1860. It says these are bad blood, half-breed clay eaters, is what they was called. Yes.
The Pilgrims, were they the Puritans?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's why I say you had a two-headed monster coming to America. You had bad blood, what do you call them? Bad blood, half-breed clay eaters coming in the 1600s to Virginia, and then you had the Pilgrims landing in Plymouth and moving up their way to Cape Cod and then up into Massachusetts. So you had a double-headed monster. You had white people that claimed to be religious, that wanted to overthrow the Indians. Then you had these people that didn't care about religion that was trying to overthrow the Indians. That's why I said you had a double-headed monster. All right? So when you get a chance, get this book right here. Excellent book. Shows you about race and class and the people that founded America were the low-life offscouring of America. Same thing this book says right here. It says that the people that founded America were the criminals and the feckless generation. Feckless and diseased. They possessed just about every disease that Europe had. They brought it over here to America. All right. So that's what's coming to America, right? All right. So now let's go to the fact that they studied the natives when they got here. The Pilgrims studied the natives. Read this right here. Read this right here at the bottom. This is also in that book I said go get called the Elliott Tracts. Go get the book called the Elliott Tracts. This was those Puritans studying the Native Americans. Read this right here.
The tracts also contain detailed descriptions of customs.
It says that it described detailed
descriptions of customs, behavior.
It said they watched the natives' customs, they watched the natives' behavior. What else?
And beliefs.
And they watched their beliefs. So read up here, right here, in this next portion.
This extraordinary representation of the Indians cast them in the role of primitive Christians and the Spanish Catholics as heathens. And then claims that it is the Indians who are captives of their foreign tormentors.
So he says that when the English got here, he said it's actually the other way around. The Indians are not the savages, but it's the Spanish conquistadors and priests that's the savages. These are not the savages. He said, but after studying them, they found out what? Read on.
Both of these images draw upon the growing popularity.
It says both of those images grew on a growing popularity that what?
Of the idea that the American Indians were descendants of the Jews.
It says already in the 1600s, the Puritans already started recognizing that the natives were who?
Descendants of the Jews.
Yes, sir.
Which book is this in?
He's going to tell you what book it is. Go ahead.
Which followed the publication of Thomas Thorogood's.
So write this down. Thomas Thorogood. Get this book by Thomas Thorogood. It was already being noticed by the Puritans in the 1600s that the Native Americans, after studying their habits, their what?
Their behaviors.
Their behavior.
And beliefs.
Their beliefs. And what else?
That was it, sir.
Oh, that belief. Okay, behavior and beliefs. That these people were the Jews. They already started recognizing this. Same thing that the guy that wrote the Aztecs, Diego Duran. Same thing that Diego Duran said after living with the Aztecs of I think he was down by the Yucatan Peninsula. Say it again. Was he with at Tenochtitlan?
Yeah.
Then he lived with the people for 40 years. So he learned their language, he learned their culture, he learned their ceremonies, their customs. He said, I have no doubt in my mind, after living with these people, learning their language, that these are the tribe of Issachar, of the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Now this book right here, by Thomas Thorogood, was from the English, saying that there's no doubt that these Native Americans are descendants of who? The Jews. They already knew that. The early settlers already started recognizing this.
This was considered like the age of discovery, right?
Yeah, this is the settler colony era. Go ahead, read that one more time with Thomas Thorogood.
It says right here, it says, both of these images draw upon the growing popularity of the idea that the American Indians were descendants of the Jews, which followed the publication of Thomas Thorogood's 1650.
By
Jews-
1650, meaning that means the Pilgrims had only been in America for 30 years. I mean, they had only been here for 30 years, and I was already recognizing that the natives are who?
Jews in America.
They're the Jews, man.
Mm.
So if you ain't got that book, go get that book.
Called 1650.
It's by Thomas Thorogood.
In the year
Elliott
1650.
track.
It's this particular book is called by Thomas Thorogood is Jews in America,
Okay.
and it was written in 1650. So because they studied them, they also studied their dress code.
Yeah.
Read this right here. This is the book that this is the book that Sarah Joseph Hale, the one that pushed Lincoln to initiate the Thanksgiving. The book she got it from also says this about these particular natives. Read this right here in the small writing.
God. Leggins. Morton, in his New English Canon, says, of such deer skins as they dress bare,
He said he was watching how the natives dress. Read on.
they make stockings.
He said they make what?
Stockings
For what?
that come within their shoes, like a stirrup stocking.
So a stirrup is like what when you ride a horse, you wear stirrups that cover your legs. Go ahead. And cover your midsection. Go ahead.
And is fastened above at their belt, which is about their middle.
So it connects from the shoe, it stops at the belt. Go ahead.
When they have their apparel on, they look like Irish in their trousers.
It says they wear what?
Trousers.
They look like the Irish. He said these first settlers that when they got here, these Algonquin speaking people, he said they wore trousers. What else?
In their trousers, the stockings joined so to their breeches.
It said it joined so to their what?
Breeches.
So when you go to Exodus and you go to Exodus chapter 28 verse 42, somebody read that real quick. Who wore breeches in Exodus chapter 28 verse 42?
Exodus chapter 28, verse 42. This shall be a continual burn.
Exodus 28:42.
All right.
Exodus 28,
Somebody read it.
42.
Go ahead.
And thou shalt make them linen breeches.
It says thou shalt make them what?
Linen breeches.
Who wore breeches? So the children of Israel wore breeches. That was a commandment from Moses. How did the natives all the way over here in America, who were supposed to be cannibal savages, how did they know to wear breeches?
It was their custom.
How did they know in 30 years of living with them that they started writing saying these are the Jews based off their behavior and their customs? How do they know this? They weren't no savages. These people had been living here with the culture that descended from their predecessors. Read that one more time.
Exodus chapter 28, verse 42. And thou shalt make them linen breeches to cover their nakedness. From the loins even unto the thighs they shall reach.
It says even from the loins until the what?
Loins,
Your
even unto the
midsection
thighs.
that covers your thighs and your midsection. The natives had breeches, bro. They knew to cover their loins, but they weren't just these savages that were just always butt naked. Yeah, they were traveling. They would travel like that sometimes. But when you look at them as a people, they knew to cover themselves, and they said they looked like Irish trousers. Finish that? You can let that go.
God. They look like Irish in their trousers. The stockings joined so to their breeches.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry to ask again. What is this book?
This book is the it's called the Chronicles of the Pilgrim Fathers of the Colony of Plymouth by Alexander Young, written in 1841. These were certain writings that were pieced together that he made one book out of, and the writings came from 1602 to 1625. All right, go ahead.
joined so to their breeches, would, in his New England's prospect part, says in the winter time the more age of them wear leather
It says when they get into the winter time, they instead of just being linen, they go to leather. So they wear thicker trousers, thicker breeches. They still wear breeches, it's just made out of leather. They know how to cover they protect themselves. But who does that? The Jews do that. But people know that. But this is after watching these people, studying these people, living with these people, they already started realizing, man, these people are the Jews. All right. So now, what do we have? We're at early settlers coming here now. Ahmad, I need you to read the pages that we're gonna fast forward a little bit. So we realize now we got this two-headed monster coming to America. You got these pilgrims escaping England for religious freedom, saying that they're going to be better masters than the Spanish. And then you got these other feckless generations of corporate men and businessmen and company men that are coming, trying to get rich and set up a pyramid scheme through land leases and through work release programs in America. These are company men sponsoring other Europeans to come to America for a promise of a better society. And then they work their debts off. You got these indentured servants that are at the bottom of the barrel of civilization. All right? So, because it's also been said that nobody that was established in England would wanted to give up their lifestyle if they had wealth and prominence in England to come to America to start over. Only people that had nothing were interested in coming to America. Only the low lives of society in England, the ones that were not wealthy, wanted to start over in America. So we got the worst of the European society starting anew in America. All right. So we're gonna speed it up a little bit because now that we understand what's coming to America and what's here and what's arrived, now we're gonna show you what they were doing from the time they got here, both the Spanish and the English and the French. All right. So Ahmad, go ahead and read. We're going to take it year by year. So let's start at the year 1600. Go ahead, Ahmad, read that right there.
God, year 1600. Juan de Oñate colonizes Pueblos.
So now you got the Spanish already in America before the Pilgrims get here. They got a 20-year head. They got a 100-year head start, but they've already reached from the coast of Mexico. They've already reached New Mexico. They've already reached Albuquerque.
Right.
What's some other cities in New Mexico?
Santa Fe.
Taos.
Yeah.
Las Cruces.
Right.
Gallup. What's the one start with a C? The one start with a C.
Cloudcroft.
No, not Cloudcroft.
Clovis.
Yeah, so they already starting to reach. The Spanish is already starting to reach New Mexico by this time. So 20 years before the Mayflower arrived in America on Plymouth, the Spanish is already killing Indians in New Mexico. Read that one more time.
Year 1600. Juan de Oñate colonizes Pueblos, New Mexico.
All right, next page. Is that it for that?
You want me to finish reading? Right?
Yeah, read that part. Mm-hmm.
The Pueblos are occupied and forced into the Spanish encomienda system, where the labor of indigenous people is awarded to conquerors.
So whoever conquers them, you are now their permanent slaves. You're now the permanent conquistador slaves. That was in 1600, 20 years before the Mayflower arrived. That's what the Spanish Caucasian was doing in America. Besides what he was doing in Central and South America as well. This is him now starting to make his way up to North America. And also here in San Antonio. San Antonio, the missions just celebrated 300 years of the Alamo Mission, San Jacinto, San Jose. All the missions that's here in San Antonio, 5 total missions that the Spanish founded San Antonio, the city we living in. Who built these missions? Not Fort Sam. That's European.
No.
The Nahuatl Indians of Texas built these these missions and were forced to work and put to death. But they don't tell you that. But they had a 300-year head start. I mean, a 100-year head start before.
A couple years ago.
Yeah, San Antonio is older than the United States. Yes, sir.
It's crazy because the natives in New Mexico pride themselves off of being Pueblo, but Pueblo in Spanish means village. So it just shows they don't really go into the history of how they were conquered.
Right.
Yeah.
So we realize now, 20-year head start. Before the Mayflower arrived, we see what the Spanish is doing in America already. They're pillaging even further up towards California. Go ahead. What else you got?
The year 1600,
Also in the year 1600. Go ahead.
Spanish target Apaches.
Now they fighting the Apaches. What else?
Dene, which is actually Navajo.
Navajo, yeah.
Utes for slave trade.
Now they got the Navajos and the Utes in the slave trade already,
And the Apaches.
and the Apaches
Okay.
as slaves
Wow.
already. In 20 years before the Mayflower arrived, 20 years before Thanksgiving. Go ahead.
The Spanish kidnap and sell Apaches, Denes, which is Navajos, and Utes in the slavery. Spanish governors also sell and kidnap Apaches and Denes to silver mining camps.
Damn. So where all them kids going? Where all the people going?
To the mining
Silver
camps to
mining
go.
camps.
They're gonna put them to work.
They go and usually you work till you die. In those mining camps, you don't come out. You go in the ground, and if you don't come up with enough silver, they push you back down in the hole. That's how the Spanish were. They were atrocious
Yeah.
in those mining camps. You didn't come out until you died. Now you died in that hole. Then they send somebody else down there to mine more silver and gold. They were plundering the land. What else you got?
Spanish rulers in the colonies developed an active slave trade by abducting Dene and other indigenous women and children through the early 1900s.
All right. What else you got?
It's in parentheses. It says Nias 1996.
No, don't worry about that.
Okay, so
That was in the 1600, right? The
Next
Spanish
page.
really getting off to a hell of a start.
that was still 1600 con.
Yep. And you could read. Go ahead and bring it out.
Oh, just open veins in Latin America. Basically, it goes into the history about how the Spaniards took control of the people that they conquered, and they sent them to mining camps to take the silver and gold out of the mines. So it's a good book to read.
Go get it.
Open Veins of
Latin America.
Open Veins
Great.
of Latin America. Okay.
Yeah, great book. Go ahead.
Gotcha. So 1600 onward, it says 1600 plus. International American Indian slave trade in 13 colonies ignites. Meaning starts.
Yeah.
It says Spaniards enslaved Native Americans.
So before the Europeans, remember the Europeans came late. The English got in the game late. The Spanish was already doing it. They was already taking natives for slaves. They already had them being sold in the mining companies. Go ahead.
And also, real quick, explains just about every Native American tribe is a Spanish name. Navajo, Pueblo, Apache, they're all Spanish names. That shows you who conquered them first. Who had already conquered them.
They can't even keep their original names. It's a damn shame. Go ahead.
So it says Spaniards enslaved Native Americans. So they went through slavery too.
They went through slavery as well. Gad went through slavery too. Issachar went through slavery because the Spanish was a part of it. They had a 100-year head start on us.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Technically, they went through slavery before the blacks did.
Well, in the Americas, because the Portuguese had the blacks coming out of West Africa doing business with the Arabs, getting shipped all out through the
It was
east.
simultaneous.
Yeah, it was at the
Okay.
it was,
So it
actually
was all happening.
actually the Arabs was in Africa trading slaves 800 years before the white man got involved.
Yep, 1200 AD.
He had a start. He had a head start.
Mhm.
But we were still getting it, but just not over here in America yet.
Not in
Go,
America yet.
go ahead.
It says demand for labor in the West Indies grows with the cultivation of sugar cane. Europeans enslave and export Native Americans to the Sugar Islands. British settlers. To the Sugar Islands. British settlers, especially those in the southern colonies, purchase or capture Native Americans to use as forced labor in cultivating tobacco, rice, and indigo.
Damn.
The international trade of American Indian slaves leads to depopulation and decimation for some, and near total annihilation for others.
So some tribes don't even exist anymore. What else you got?
Next page.
This is all before the Mayflower. All before the celebration of Thanksgiving.
Gosh.
Go ahead.
The year 1601.
1601. Go ahead.
Tompiro Pueblo Massacre in New Mexico. Spanish troops destroy 3 Indian villages and 900 Tompiro Pueblo people in the Sandia Mountains of New Mexico.
I've been to the Sandia Mountains.
The Sandias sit right next to Albuquerque.
It's sitting next to that word Sandia is Spanish for what?
Watermelon.
Because they say when that sun comes up in the morning, it turns red. It turns that clay red.
Actually, when it goes, it's sunset.
Oh, when it sets?
Is when it goes down.
Yeah, the whole mountain turns red.
When it comes up, it's on the other side of the mountains. But when it sets, it's like
you can see
right on the mountain.
You can see it. Yeah.
It's got a pink hue. And it looks watermelon. Yeah.
And you can see, and also you can see the range, how far it actually goes down. I've been to the top of that mountain, man. That's what 14,000.
Sandia Crest is 10,000. 678 feet.
There you go.
10,678. Yeah.
Bro, you know it like the back of your hand. Go ahead, Ahmad.
How many times I've been up there? I used to be fascinated with it.
All right,
so
it's 10,000 feet above sea level. So already the Sandia Pueblo, which is a casino there too. The Sandia casino there as well. So they experience.
Look down at it from the top of the.
It's off I-25, right?
25 tramway. 25 and tramway, yeah.
So you already got a slaughter and a massacre. 19 years before the Mayflower, the natives are getting, the Pueblos in Sandia, Albuquerque, are getting slaughtered. Go ahead.
Wow. Since Spanish troops destroyed 3 Indian villages and 900 Tompiro Pueblo people in the Sandia Mountains of New Mexico. I just read that.
All right. What else you got?
Next page.
Yep.
It says 1607. Colony of Virginia is established.
So now we got Virginia going. The white man getting started now. Not the Puritan white man, not the religious white man, the feckless generation of white men, the low clay eater population, the hookworm having white man, the offscoring of European society white man, the white trash white man is getting his start over in Virginia. Go ahead.
It says colony of Virginia established 1607. John Smith. Okay, that's just describing the picture. John Smith map of Virginia. The Virginia colony is established under the corporate character of the Virginia Company of London.
So now you got businessmen that invested into a company. America was a business. It wasn't this idea of pleasure. Of freedom, democracy. This was a business. The businessmen set up Virginia, and they brought in indentured servants to work off a debt. And at the end of their debt, they had to pay 1 shilling fee to the company. You pay 1 shilling back to the company. That's how you pay your debt back. And you grow 1/5 of a crop to feed the next settlers that's coming behind you. Everybody must grow 1/5 crop, and you have to give 1 shilling to the company that brought you over if they sponsored you as an indentured servant. You work 7 years, you work your debt off, and you get 3 to 4 acres. They boosted it up after about 10 years to get 25 to 50 acres. All right, go ahead.
It says the Virginia colony is established under the corporate charter of the Virginia Company of London, a joint stock company chartered by King James I of Great Britain.
It was a pyramid scheme.
Wow.
Just like Amway, just like Noni Juice. You sponsor somebody, you pay me $200. You pay $200 to get in, and then you get your clients, but I get a piece of all your clients.
Yeah.
I get a piece of everybody you bring over. It's a pyramid scheme. America was built off a pyramid scheme.
I think today they call it network marketing.
Network marketing is what they call it. That's how America was founded.
Would that be considered capitalism?
Yeah,
it's a form of capitalism. Yeah.
This is business.
It's business. You know what? I make a portion off what you make. Everything you bring in, I make, and anybody that comes in after you, I get a portion of their proceeds. I get a percentage. Go ahead.
Joint stock company chartered by King James I of Great Britain
so
and
now,
led.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. and led by John Smith.
And led by John Smith. Now you can read about John Smith, and we ain't got time, but you can read about John Smith in here, American Slavery, American Freedom. You can read how he set up his colonies and his business model. He had a business model that he ran America by when he got here to Virginia. It was a different business model than the Puritans had. They were just trying to survive and then teach the Bible, the Geneva Bible. This man was trying to make money. Go ahead.
John Rolfe and other British colonists. Corporations are empowered by the crown to govern themselves and confer that right to their colonies, and confer that right to their colonies.
But you had to pay taxes back to the mother country. That's how English got rich. So they sponsored you. They sponsored to get the name Sir, like you get Sir Walter Raleigh, Sir Francis Drake. To get the name Sir, you had to be knighted. The way you get knighted is you go to war in Europe against warring tribes. If you conquer them, then you get back to England and they knight you and you become a knight. When you become a knight, they sponsor you to spread out and colonize. You now are qualified as a knight to colonize other civilizations.
Like the Knights of Columbus?
Yeah. I don't know about the Knights of
That's how
Columbus.
Sir Charles Barkley became a sir then.
I know, right? I hate his own people.
Right.
Go ahead.
Yeah. That's a true statement.
See, yeah, I'm sorry, I had to throw that in there.
Yeah.
That's cool.
The year 1608, Jamestown settlers demand from Powhatan annual tribute of corn.
Now that land, Jamestown River, that land was called the Powhatan because you had the Powhatan Indians there, that were there prior to the white man. Now during this time in 1608, he said, we demand that you give us your what? Your corn.
Corn.
It said it's not by peace treaty. We're not gonna sit down and negotiate the corn. We want your damn corn. Go ahead.
We don't give it to us, we don't take it anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it says John Smith orders the Powhatan to submit to the English crown and provides settlers with an annual tribute of corn. John Smith forcefully takes corn from villages, and Powhatan orders him to be captured.
What else you got?
And then the next page here. 1609, Jamestown settlers drive Powhatan off their lands and enslave them.
Go ahead.
War breaks out between the Powhatan and the Virginia colonists as they steal land.
So we got the thieves of Europe stealing land from the natives 11 years before the Mayflower arrives.
Wow.
It was already stealing.
It was already happening.
But you get Thanksgiving stories. You get stories about peace between pilgrims and Indians having dinner together. You're not getting the whole view of what's happening years and years and years prior to that so-called Thanksgiving moment. You don't get the facts. Every year, the white man is pillaging and killing, raiding villages, taking corn and killing and taking resources. Whether it's the Spanish Caucasian, English Caucasian, French Caucasian, Portuguese Caucasian, Dutch Caucasian, they're all thieves. But you get Thanksgiving, and you're about to go spend money to go drop on a turkey. But read on.
Right. So war breaks out between the Powhatan and the Virginia colonists as they steal land, pillage graves, occupy native villages.
They rob graves because during those early settler years, they didn't know how to plant crops. But they also learned that the natives, when their family members died, they buried them with corn in wicker baskets. So all they had to do is dig up the graves, and they'll find some food, and they'll find food because it was part of the ceremony to bury the natives with the corn. So they'll dig up their bodies to steal the dead man's corn. But read on.
Occupy native villages and enslave natives.
Right. What else you got?
Already been. The year 1609 still. The Spanish crown uses slave labor to develop missions.
So they use, now the Spanish are building missions. And they use what labor to build these missions?
Slave labor.
So when you go to Mission San Juan, down here in San Antonio, Mission San Jose,
Concepcion.
Mission Concepcion, when you go to these missions, understand that these were slaves, native slaves that built these missions that you go pay your tourist dollars to go witness.
Right.
Who built them aqueducts when you go watch the aqueducts here in San Antonio? Slaves, man. There's missions all over the southern region of the United States.
Native slaves.
Yeah, they use native slaves here in San Antonio.
You know what's funny? There's like there's one tiny so-called Native American Gadite reservation in the whole state of Texas.
Yeah, but they
I
got
had to
hella,
find that out. I didn't know that.
but they got hella missions
Wow.
though.
Yeah, that's what they did so much with Gad here, but and then they took Gad almost completely out of Texas.
Yeah.
You know
The Trail of Tears. Go ahead.
But the Spanish monarchy used slave labor and forced conversion to Christianity in their development of Spanish missions in the Southwest. Slave markets include indigenous women and children.
So that's Texas, Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico,
Indigenous women,
California,
and children were the first in the slave markets
They was first in the Spanish slave trade in the Southwest.
in America.
The women and children, in particular, they killed off the men, and that's what they did here in San Antonio. They killed off the men, and they kept the Spanish women here and children, and they became the workers of the fields surrounding the missions. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, next page.
What else you got?
It says the year 1610. Paspahegh massacre, if I'm pronouncing it right. Paspahegh massacre. Paspahegh historical, that describes the picture. Paspahegh massacre. Virginia's Lord Delaware sends 70 colonists to attack the Paspahegh Indians living in their village near Jamestown in Virginia, killing between 16 and 65 people. The wife and children of the village chief are captured, tortured, and executed.
Damn. 10 years before the Mayflower got here. What else you got?
Next page. The year 1613. English kidnap Pocahontas.
Everybody know about Pocahontas,
Yeah,
right?
we've all heard of Pocahontas.
You ever
anyway,
seen
right?
Disney movie Pocahontas?
Right.
So the English stole her from her people. Go ahead.
English kidnapped Pocahontas, daughter of Chief Wahun Sonnecock. They offered to ransom her for all the English prisoners held by the Powhatan. The Powhatan released their prisoners, but the English keep Pocahontas and take her to England.
Damn.
They tricked them into releasing, but they didn't give her
That sound like your friend? That sound like Deuteronomy 28. Read on.
While captive, she is Christianized, given the name Rebecca, and married to her captor.
Damn.
John Smith, right?
I don't know where.
John Rolfe, I'm sorry. And married to her captor, John Rolfe.
Wow.
It was a comma, so I stopped, but okay. She dies traveling home to Virginia in 1617. Her child remains in England.
Damn. Who knew Pocahontas had a baby still in England? All right. Jaleel, you next. What you got?
1614 to 1621. Pilgrims rob graves and pillage villages.
What are the pilgrims doing?
Rob graves and pillage villages.
What year is this?
1614 to 1621.
So they already over here doing what?
Robbing graves and pillage villages.
Go ahead.
The pilgrims had learned that native people buried their dead with stores of corn and beans. After their arrival, the pilgrims desecrate native graves and take the seeds. Seeing this, the Wampanoag attack the pilgrims but retreat upon the sound of gunfire.
Grave robbers, grave snatchers, body snatchers, man. Food snatchers. Read on. No respect for the dead.
Next page, 1614. Slave ships and plague epidemic.
Now you got somebody look up Captain Thomas Hunt. Somebody look up Captain Thomas Hunt. This was a magnificent European explorer, settler from England. Somebody look up Captain Thomas Hunt. Captain Thomas Hunt. Who got it?
And that says,
You got to read to the camera.
hold on. This is,
Can't hear you, bro.
Just whoever got it, read it.
In 1614 exploration of the American northeast coast, which he named New England,
It said he named what?
which he named New England.
So this guy named New England, New England. Go ahead.
His writings and his detailed map, which was carried on the Mayflower, were very influential.
So this man, he was already here before the Mayflower arrived, and he left, and they had his map with them on the Mayflower. Go ahead. What did he do? He was there in 1614, so he was here 4 years before the Mayflower arrived. Go ahead, or took off.
So were very influential in the English settlement of this area. However, the 1614 Smith exploration had a dark side.
He had a what?
He had a dark side.
Was he just coming over here to make peace with the Indians?
He had a dark side.
Was he coming over there to colonize and civilize the savages?
He had a dark side.
What did he do?
One that had a lasting impact on relations between the Native Americans and the Plymouth settlers. This
The Plymouth settlers.
Plymouth settlers. This impact was acutely felt right here in Nauset, at the elbow of Cape Cod.
All right, so get to the point. What did he do?
Oh wow, okay, yeah. So it says Hunt's mission took a dark and ominous turn when he decided to engage in the slave trading business as a means to engage his personal profit from the voyage.
So he came over instead of trying to set up work contracts. He said, "I'm gonna take these natives back and sell them." What did he do? Read on.
He captured 27 Native Americans by luring them on his ship under pretext of trucking.
Meaning trading. Trucking is trading. He said, "I'm bringing you on my ship so I can trade with you."
Human trafficking.
Human trafficking, bro. The white man, first human trafficking in the New Americas. Read on. That's the Spanish word. Go ahead.
As trade was often called in those days. Once on board, the unsuspecting native was subdued and confined below decks until the cargo was complete. 20 of these natives were taken from Plautex, which became Plymouth. Slovakia, which became Plymouth. Gotcha. And 7 were taken from right here on the elbow of Cape.
So there was two. It was 2 different types of tribes that he took. So of the 20, he took you ever heard of Squanto? It's a Squanto.
Yeah.
Squantos. He took Squanto's people. Go ahead.
Before returning to England, Hunt stooped in Spain.
So he stopped in Spain. Before he got to England, he stopped in Spain and did what?
Stopped in Spain to sell these kidnapped Native Americans into slavery.
For how much? If it don't tell you, he sold them for 20 pounds. He sold them for 20 British pounds each.
27 times 20 is what?
Or 20, yeah.
270 plus times 270. Before 70, 140. 640.
About 600 pounds. So he sold them for 20 pounds a piece in British sterling.
like $44.
Or British shillings.
$44 each.
Yeah, it wasn't no expensive amount of money. Read on.
It says Smith was furious upon learning of Hunt's misleads. He wrote, "Notwithstanding, upon my departure, he betrayed 27 of these poor innocent souls, which he sold in Spain for slaves, to move their hate against our nation."
So now, when the Pilgrims got there in 1620, they was already hated because of this man right here took 27 of them and sold them into Spain for slaves. All right, let that go. What else you got? But also, he didn't just take 27 slaves. He left something behind. I don't know if it tells you what he left behind. He left back plagues. Does it say that?
Yeah.
Go ahead. This is what he left behind. Go ahead.
1614, slave ships and plague epidemic.
This man, Captain Thomas Hunt, he not only took slaves, but he left plagues behind that decimated the population of the natives. Read.
Captain Thomas Hunt captures 20 Pate and 7 Nassets, selling them as slaves to Spain. Captain Hunt's expedition brings the plague.
He said it brings the what?
Brings the plague.
This man brought a pandemic to America. Read on.
Destroying the Pate, an estimated 72,000 to 90,000 people.
Almost 100,000 people died because of this one man. 100,000 people died because of this man bringing disease. Not only was he a thief and a kidnapper and a robber, a man-stealer, but he was diseased, full of disease.
He was white trash.
Yeah.
He was one of them.
Yeah, read.
Damn.
From southern New England before contact with the Europeans.
Damn, what else you got?
Next page. 1614. Squanto, a Pate Indian, is kidnapped and enslaved. Squanto, or Tisquantum, teaching the Plymouth colonists to land. It says Squanto, teaching the Plymouth colonists to plant corn with fish.
So he's exactly what we read earlier. It was Squanto that taught the early settlers how to use fish to grow their crops. They used 3 fish for every stalk of corn. Them little shad fish, them little small 1-inch, 2-inch fish that you catch by the bank. You put 3 of those fish per every stalk of corn, and your corn produces and yields.
So it's faster.
It grows faster.
They do it to this day.
Yep.
To this day, they just get it, they put it in a barrel, let it break down over like a period of a year. And it's just the most nutrient dense thing for plants other than that nitrogen.
Yeah. Yep. So it shows you how that they had knowledge. But Squanto, because he was kidnapped, sold into Spain, he fled to England, learned how to speak English under one of his captors, his masters. His master sent him back to America, and he ran up on the pilgrims and showed the pilgrims in spoken English and showed the pilgrims how to plant crops. He's part of the reason why they survived. A main heavy portion of why they survived. They almost didn't make it that winter. Go ahead.
Squanto is one of 24 Indians kidnapped by the English and taken to Spain for the slave market.
There it is. Go ahead. What else you got?
Ransomed by monks in Spain, Squanto escapes to England, where he works for a wealthy merchant who teaches him English and arranges for Squanto's return to his home.
And when he got back, because 100,000 of his people died, he had no family. He only had a few people left. Because they got hit by the plague from the same people that captured him. What else you got? Yes, sir.
And monks at that time were only Moabites or Ammonites or.
I don't know who the monks were at that time. They must have had to be. They could have been some Asian monks, some Indian monks. I'm not sure in particular. I know they wasn't Arabs, because the Arabs was heavily complicit in the slave trade. They wasn't returning nobody. They was maxing their dollars out. What else you got?
1616 to 1619. Captain Thomas Hunt, yellow fever and smallpox.
So he dropped off yellow fever and what?
And smallpox. New England. Interview. It says yellow fever. Yellow fever kills 2/3 of the Wampanoag, and smallpox ravages other tribes in New England. An estimated 45,000 Wampanoag from Massachusetts Rhode to Rhode Island die from yellow fever, introduced by European traders and slavers.
Man.
2/3 of the nation perishes.
This is 5 years before your tradition, your Thanksgiving tradition.
Right.
This is what's happening in America. This is what's coming to America. What else you got?
Invasion from all directions. 1618. Chief Powhatan dies. His death ignites nearly 2 decades of fighting between Powhatans and English colonists.
Man, this man was fighting for 20 years against the English. Finally died 2 years before the Mayflower got here. Go ahead.
Ending in 1644 with the destruction of Powhatan Confederacy.
So now all the nation that came from made confederate with his tribes, with his people, they all got annihilated in 1644. But he died in 1618. 1618.
18.
What else you got?
1619. Jamestown colonists start Indian school.
They started what?
Indian school.
Don't you got a road in Albuquerque called Indian School?
Mhm.
Because it was probably what?
Indian
It was probably a damn Indian school. You know what I'm saying? You know, it's probably an Indian school. And we know when you read about them Indian schools, what those really were.
Boarding
Boarding schools. But what was going on within them boarding schools?
They were converting
Converting.
they were converting the so-called natives into they're taking their garments and they're making them put these little corny outfits on.
Yeah, they were retraining them and eliminating their heritage and culture. They couldn't be Red Feather anymore. They couldn't be Running Bull. They couldn't be Swift Cloud. They had to be John, Paul, Mark.
A lot of them had multiple wives in their home, and Esau stopped them from that too. Esau outlawed that.
And he put them in their boy school clothes. And they couldn't speak. They were barred and outlawed from speaking their indigenous language. If they were caught speaking their indigenous language, some of them was killed.
Mm-hmm.
You had to eliminate. You had to whitewash their culture. That was like a brainwashing factory to wash out the native culture, the native names, the native languages. Mm-hmm. They had the native roots. All had to be whitewashed by Europeans. And this was in Canada, North America. This was all over, from east to the west coast, from all the way from New York to Washington to Alaska. This was going on. All these, the Canadians, the French Canadians, the French believed in Indian schools. The English believed in Indian schools. The Spanish just kill you.
The school I went to was a former boarding school.
It was a former boarding school.
It was Albuquerque boarding school.
It was called Albuquerque boarding school.
Yeah.
Our mom's great grandfather on her mother's side, he tells the family passed down that he was taken from his mother and father, and he was put into school. But he was taken, and then it's not his actual birthday. He was given his birthday and his name, so they gave him his own name and his birthday.
They gave him their own name and his own birthday.
Yeah.
And a lot of them got sent off to Europe to be slaves under child trafficking, under the elite figures in Europe.
They were doing child trafficking.
They was bringing them back to Europe, selling them to different imperialists in elite people in Europe. They wasn't just staying over here.
After being slaves over there for certain things, like in New Mexico is for silver, and then the name Platero, which is my mom's native name, means silversmith.
I wonder why her name means silversmith.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Like plata, right? Plata is like silver, right?
Yeah. Yep. Platero.
Platero.
That's her last name.
So why is her name silversmith? She's good with
their family. Her ancestors were made to mine them silver mines.
Right.
They got Silver City, New Mexico.
Silver City, New Mexico. Wow.
That's why they call it.
Come on, bro. This is getting crazy, man. It's not hard to look. You start to uncover all the hidden things, all the dirt that America's been involved with, and the atrocities of killing the original descendants of America.
It's not far from
the lost sheep of the house of Israel.
Yes, sir. They're still trying to rewrite history, change the books, and change the curriculum.
Right.
So they don't teach.
They don't want to teach this. No. That's why you get the feathers, and you get Thanksgiving turkey, and you get football. You get the Cowboys against the Indians. You get a football game.
It's funny. Every Thanksgiving it's the same two teams.
Yeah, I wonder why. Why is it the Cowboys versus the Indians?
Cowboys and Indians.
I'm gonna tell you why it's the Cowboys and Indians.
That's funny.
I'm gonna tell you why it's the Cowboys and Indians. Hold that. Finish reading that real quick. Let me get this real quick.
Everyone knows the Redskins.
I'm gonna tell you why it's the Cowboys and Indians out. I gotta get this real quick.
Yeah, Silver City, not too far from El Paso, right by Texas, southern New Mexico. Damn, that's crazy.
Read this right here, W. At page 110 of American 1750. Why is it the Cowboys and Indians?
It was no mere luck of the toss.
He said it was no mere luck of the toss that what?
Writes Winthrop D. Jordan.
His name was Winthrop D. Jordan.
That placed the profile of an American Indian rather than an American Negro.
He said, you ever seen that American Indian coin? That Indian head coin?
Yeah, with the buffalo.
With the buffalo on the other side?
Okay.
He said they had a choice. They could have put an American Negro, or they could have put an Indian with the buffalo. He said it wasn't no luck of the toss. That what?
Profile an American Indian rather than the American Negro on the famous old 5-cent piece.
On that nickel, that Indian head nickel. He said there ain't no luck of the toss. He said a white man calculated before stamping and minting that 5-cent nickel. They understood why they wasn't gonna put no nigger on there. Read.
Confronting the Indian in America.
He said confronting the Indian in America. Go ahead.
Was a testing experience.
He said they loved the battle. They loved the battle and the fight that the Indians put up with them. He said we appreciate the fight the Indian gave us. That's why it's always the Cowboys
more respect for them.
and the Indians in the damn football game.
Which that scripture is it Gad shall
be a troop.
Shall be a trooper, but he should be overcome. But at the last he shall overcome.
Right.
Yeah, this is that.
Genesis 49.
Yep. Go ahead.
It says, common to all the colonies to conquer the Indian, a formidable and worthy adversary.
He says because the Indian was a what?
Formidable and worthy adversary.
He was a formidable and worthy adversary. He was worth that 5-cent nickel. He was a worthy opponent to be put on that damn nickel. He earned that nickel, bro. He earned that nickel, bro.
Not the quarter.
Not that nigga though.
50 cents. Yeah, right.
You can't even get the penny, man.
Wow.
You couldn't even put a brown brother on a penny. Go ahead.
Was an act and a symbol in the ongoing conquest of the wilderness.
He says the Indian nickel was a reminder, and it was an act of a what? And a symbol of what?
The ongoing conquest.
That nickel is to say the war's not over.
Wow.
The war's not over, man. That's why they put the damn Cowboys and Indians. They love it. Damn Tonto and John and the Lone Ranger fighting the Indians. They love it. He said they love that. They love the battle that the Indians put up to them. He said they were the formidable opponent. They was worth that nickel.
Wow.
Read.
And became a part of the civilizing mission of colonization.
He says that was part of the mission, man. Killing the Indian, conquering the Indian was part of the mission. And a reminder of that is that nickel, that Indian head nickel with that buffalo. Everything the white man does is calculated. Everything he does, there's a reason behind it. It's not just for no sham. We're just gonna put an Indian on here. We're just gonna put a buffalo on here. They know what they're doing. They know why they do it. They know what it means.
Everything's for a reason.
And they know what when they put the damn when tomorrow's game come on, you gonna see Cowboys versus Indians. Right. There's a reason behind why they put that on. Oh, you got the book. Sister got the book. Yeah, go ahead.
English, that's it right there.
Yeah, that's it right there. So that's why they do that. What else you got?
That's it.
Yes, sir. Who's next? Nathaniel, you next.
It says in 1622. What's up? How you say that? Powhatan resistance as justification for genocide. Approximate boundaries.
He said his resistance was justification for what?
As justification for genocide.
This man wanted to protect his people, and his land was justification for what?
For genocide.
Come on, y'all understand what how they look at this man? You put up a fight. That gives us the justification to kill you off and all your people. It's manifest destiny. It's us or nothing else. We want all or nothing.
They call them savages.
Yeah, but they call the native savages and cannibals. Yes, sir.
It's a little off, but that's how the whole concept of police arresting somebody, you resist an arrest.
Yeah.
So the fact that you're standing up for your rights, or you're just not accepting getting bowled over, now all of a sudden I got a right to mistreat you or to kill you.
Yeah, because you're resisting arrest.
Resisting arrest.
It's the same
concept. Even though when you're not being arrested.
Yeah.
But you're resisting arrest.
There's no grounds for the arrest.
Right.
Yeah. Just for the fact that you're resisting.
You didn't commit no crime, but
right. Read on.
It said.
Yeah. What? Read on.
It says approximate boundaries and tribe of the Powhatan in the early 1600s. John Smith notes that the uprising provides a great rationale for complete extermination of native peoples.
He says, because they resist, gives us the reason why we should and we're able by law to completely exterminate them. What year is that at the top?
That's 1622.
So this is 2 years. This is part of the first. These are the pilgrims that arrived. This is when the pilgrims got here. They left in 1620. They got here in 16. No, it took 66 days to get here. 1621. They've been here for a year. This is their mindset of the pilgrims after being in America for 1 year. This is already their mindset. What happened to the Bible?
I know.
What happened to being civilized?
Religious.
Well, what about us being more religiously moral than the Spanish?
They were religiously oppressed, you said, right?
Right. Read on.
God. Smith states that war will be good for plantation.
Damn.
Because we have just cause to destroy them by all means possible.
Y'all understand what y'all reading? This is not the story that you get in school. This is not the fairy tale they want you to feed your kids in elementary, middle school, and high school. This is real American history. Real American violence, murder, genocide, and the justification behind it. Read on.
When John Smith arrived, there has been estimated 30,000 Powhatan and Allied Indians. By 1669, the population is decimated and only 2,000 remain.
Remember, that was the Virginia Company. He was the forerunner of the Virginia Company of London, the founder of the colony system, the colony business model that was established in America. What else you got?
So that's from 30,000 to 2,000. From 1622, Royal British Virginia Company orders extermination of all Powhatan. It says
Royal what?
It says Royal British Virginia Company.
That's the company that founded the indentured servitude business in America. They set it up to say, you know what? They're messing with our money. They're not allies with us. We got to eliminate them. They're messing with our business model. Our goal is to keep getting Europeans over here, set them up for work, so we can keep getting pieces of that 7 years of labor, so that we can retire. Read on.
It says approximate boundaries and tribes of the Powhatan in the early 1600s. The Royal British Virginia Company ordered all colonists to exterminate all Powhatan and prohibit any peacemaking with them.
It says prohibit any what?
Peacemaking with them.
Damn.
No peace.
No peace, bro. So look, this is within just a year or two. What else you got?
The Chickamauga people are nearly exterminated during this time.
Damn, they didn't even get it out to 1600s.
By 1622 to 1646.
That's 1 year of them being here, bro. That's crazy. That's crazy. Within 1 year, a whole tribe of people is almost exterminated. Who's the invasive population? They are.
Who's the illegal aliens?
Right. Now, who's the illegal aliens, bro? They are. Read on.
Powhatan rebelled against Virginia colonists. It says the Powhatan Confederacy and Allied Indians burned the Jamestown settlement to the ground in what is remembered by English as the First Virginia War.
That's why they got that 5-cent nickel. Go ahead.
Opachaga, leader of the Pamunkey, and his chief declared it's time to resist colonial invasion of their lands and killed 347 colonists, 1/3 of the colony. Others are pushed off the lands. The Powhatan chiefdom fight 2 wars with English colonists in Virginia, the first in 1622 to 1623, and the second in 1644 to 1646. Both ended in treaties between the Indians and the English. Treaties typically are violated, and Virginia native people are eventually forced from their homesteads by thousands to English newcomers.
Man, they're not keeping those treaties. Go ahead.
In 1623, Westagus massacre in Massachusetts. Under false peaceful pretense, several chiefs and villagers are invited and Westagus to meet with colonists and are executed.
He said that they got tricked to a dinner, and they got invited to a dinner and got executed. Go ahead.
In 1623, Pamunkey Peace Talk Massacre. John Smith taking the king of Pamunkey prisoner. It says at the Pamunkey Peace Talk, Virginia colonists secretly poisoned wine, which kills Powhatan leader and 200 Pamunkey people. Additionally, 50 Pamunkey
Like Caesar Borgia.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like the Borgias, bro. Yeah. Secretly poisoning the wine.
Yeah.
They telling each other like, you know, you always got that drunk white boy that want to be in the party. They're like, no, don't drink that one. Don't drink that one.
Don't take it.
Don't drink that one over there. That was fixed. That's not for them.
It's a setup.
That's Psalms 55 and 21 where it says, the words of his mouth were smoother than butter.
That's what Mount Waller had. Yeah, go ahead and read it.
But war was in his heart.
He said the words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but what?
But war was in his heart.
But war was in his heart. This is the man that they want you to sit down and shake hands with and celebrate with. What else you got?
And it says his words were softer than oil, yet were they drawn swords.
Man, his words are swords, bro. He's showing you how he operates. What else you got?
That was it.
No, I'm saying Nathaniel, what else you got?
It just says 50 Pamunkey are typically murdered. That was it.
That's it? That's you done for yours? Who's next? Karaya, you next. Read it loud. What you got?
Invasion from all directions, stolen lands, stolen people, from 1600 to 1699. In the year of 1626, Galinago, genocide of Carib Indians.
Carib Indians.
Carib Indians.
They're in the Caribs, in the Caribbean, Carib Indians.
Caribbean.
Yeah, the Caribbeans. Go ahead.
English and French settlers invite Carib Indians to a gathering where they serve alcohol and intoxicate the Carib population.
So this is talking about Jamaicans. This is Benjamin.
Yeah. This is Benjamin down in the West Indies.
So that's have Arawaks though.
Yeah, you got Arawaks.
Because by this time they're already over here.
No, Puerto Rican.
Arawaks
were all throughout the Caribbean.
They started coming over in 1619. So they're already here.
They were already here.
The southern tribe, the southern kingdom.
But they was getting eliminated by the same tactics that they were using and the English was using. The French used the same tactics of killing with poisonous wine. Read on.
After they returned to their village, colonists sneak into the village and murder 120 Caribs in their sleep, including their chief, Tegreman. The following day, nearly 4,000 Caribs are rounded up and forced into an area known as Bloody Point and Bloody River, where they are massacred.
How many of them? 4,000 of them after that? Damn. Go ahead.
During the Carib resistance, 100 settlers are killed and the remaining Carib flee. By 1640, those now already enslaved are moved to Dominica for the slave trade.
Damn. So Dominica is where? Cuba, right? Or Santo Domingo. Santo Domingo. Half Haiti and half Dominican Republic. So they got hit with the slave trade too. And then, what year was this?
That was in 1626.
That means that was 6 years of the Pilgrims being in America. 6 years after that so-called Thanksgiving. What else you got? Read quick.
1627. Carib slaves brought to Jamestown.
Now they was also not only selling them to Europe, but they brought the slaves from Santo Domingo up to Virginia. Go ahead.
As part of triangle trade slave labor, the English import Carib indigenous slaves into Jamestown due to loss and death of Powhatans. Escaped Carib slaves seek refuge among Powhatan communities.
All right, so now they merging with each other, just like runaway Negroes ran into the Indian territories. Read what else you got? Read on.
1628, Massachusetts.
Now we're creeping up onto the real Thanksgiving. That's what we're about to get into. Just so y'all know, you're gonna get into the real Thanksgiving, not the one that we've been lied to and told about. All this is happening prior to the actual Thanksgiving. Go ahead.
In 1628, Massachusetts Bay Colony is established. In 1627, the Council for New England issues a new land grant to a new group of investors, including a few from the Dorchester Company, to establish a for-profit enterprise.
So America was a what?
For-profit enterprise.
America is a business. This is not about anything holy, anything spiritual. America has nothing to do with spirituality. America was built and born off the basis of selling land grants and setting up indentured servitude and setting up contracts, human trafficking, and import-export trades with commodities in sugar, wine, tobacco, cocoa, all of what America can provide. This is a business, bro. There's nothing holy about America. This is a business. Read on.
Still to this day.
The New England Company for a plantation in Massachusetts Bay. The Massachusetts Bay Colony becomes the first English chartered colony whose board of governors does not reside in England.
So now it's America starting to become independent, branch away from England. Go ahead.
Thus paving the way for permanent settlement.
All right, what else you got?
1630, Puritans invade and displace Wampanoag, Massachusetts.
The Puritans invade.
The Pilgrims.
The Pilgrims invade who?
It says invade and displace Wampanoag, Massachusetts in 1630.
That was all of Massachusetts. When you look at Massachusetts, you got a lot of space, greenery in Massachusetts. Massachusetts is beautiful. It's beautiful. Go ahead.
English Puritans arrive by the thousands and invade the area now known as Massachusetts, displacing Wampanoag and other indigenous populations.
And these were Algonquin-speaking people, just different tribes of Algonquin-speaking language. They spoke it's called Indo-American language, not American, Indian language, where from Canada, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Delaware, Maryland, and they also had some spotted areas around Lake Michigan. They own that area as well. They had some spotted territories around Lake Michigan or Lake Superior, whatever that bottom part of the lake that comes out of the Great Lakes.
Chicago?
Where Illinois is.
So Lake Michigan.
That's Lake Michigan. So right at the bottom of Lake Michigan, they had that area as well. All these were Wampanoag. They spoke the same language or similar dialects. Go ahead.
1632, English colonists violate truce in Virginia. Although a truce is reached between Pamunkey and Chickahominy Indians in Virginia and English colonists, slave raids on native communities continue, as do land grabs.
So they do slave raids and land grabs. That's what the white man was doing to the natives. Slave raids and land grabs. Take you, sell you, and take your land. That's the American way. What else you got?
1633 to 1635, Jesuit missionaries.
So now here comes the Jesuit missionaries. What do?
give Huron smallpox blankets.
Huron Indians, they give them what?
Smallpox blankets.
So here come these Jesuit missionaries handing out what?
Smallpox blankets.
Handing out smallpox blankets, bro. They knew what they was doing.
Huron is the name, one of the names of the Great Lakes.
Of the Great Lakes.
Lake Huron.
Yeah, Lake Huron. But those were natives there. They got the beauty of getting the luxurious 1,000-stitch blankets, thread blankets that had the damn smallpox embedded in it. What you do is you rub the blankets on somebody that's infected already. That's how you infect the blankets. You take somebody that's already infected, you rub the skin of somebody that's already infected, and then you pass those blankets out. That's deliberate. They knew what they were doing.
It's a bioweapon.
Yeah, that's a chemical weapon, biochemical weapon.
Smallpox is horrible too, if you ever seen pictures of it.
Yeah, when you start bleeding out of every orifice, you start bleeding out your eyes, bleeding out your ears, bleeding out your nose. Your fever's out of order.
Bumps and blisters all over your body. Big ones too. It's nasty.
Read on.
Come. French Jesuit missionaries.
They go them French, bro. That's how they got Canada. That's why the Canada speak French. But they did the same thing the English did. English took a page out the Spanish book. They're all devils. Read on.
Tell the Huron that if they are baptized and convert to Christianity, they will be spared the disease. Among those who refuse, they provide smallpox-laden blankets. More than 10,000 Huron Indians die from smallpox.
Come on, bro. What else you got?
Smallpox is a killer.
Last one. 1633. Zuni revolt against the Spanish.
It's over in the southwest.
Zuni is in New Mexico.
In New Mexico. Zuni Pueblo, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Zuni revolt against Spanish slavery and mission system, killing all of the Spanish soldiers and half of the Spanish missionaries.
Yeah, right. Good for that one. Round of applause for that one. Go ahead. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, somebody got some justice on that one. Yeah, round of applause for that one, bro. What else you got? You next. You got the last one. Yohanan.
God. 1636. Mystic massacre of the Pequot.
The Pequot. Now you're getting to the real Thanksgiving.
Right.
But now we get to the real celebration. We read about the December 11th, 1621 encounter that the Pilgrims had for 3-day celebration when they had good ears of corn that grew and they ate and feasted, but they didn't call that Thanksgiving. Now we get into what the white man actually called Thanksgiving, not the cover-up. All right, go ahead. So we get into the real Thanksgiving. Go ahead.
John Mason and Captain John Underhill of the Massachusetts Bay Colony Militia launched a genocidal night attack on May 26th, along with Mohegan and Narragansett allies. They attacked a large Pequot village on the Mystic River, where over 700 men, women, and children of the Pequot tribe are gathered for their annual Green Corn Festival.
Now when you actually in New Mexico, a lot of their festivals align with Hebrew holidays. Majority of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the Feast of First Fruits, the Pentecost,
Tabernacles.
The Feast of Tabernacles, all those holidays almost fall simultaneously with the Hebrew calendar, bro. It's without a doubt. But go ahead.
In the pre-dawn hours, they are surrounded by English and Dutch mercenaries who ordered...
Now the English and the Dutch were enemies prior to coming to America. But the enemy of my enemy is my friend. They were enemies. They had war. The Dutch and the English war, Anglo-Dutch wars. Several wars were going on in Europe. Now all of a sudden they both have become friends in this destruction of the Native Americans here in this Western Hemisphere. Read on.
Who ordered them to come outside, where they are shot
or clubbed to death.
Damn. Read on.
Those huddled inside the long house, mostly women and children, are burned alive.
Here's this American way, bro. Go ahead.
Troops use dogs to hunt down survivors to carry out tortures and executions.
I thought they were going to be better than the Spanish, more humane than the Spanish. That's what they said when they were in Europe. We're going to be better colonizers than the Spanish. That was that utopian colonization system that they created.
Smooth words. No different. They just had a different approach.
Not much different. Read on.
Or send into slavery. The day after the massacre, the governor of Massachusetts Bay Colony declares a day of Thanksgiving.
Bingo. There it is, right there, bro. There's your Thanksgiving right there.
Thanks to who?
Yeah. Who's getting who got thanks and who's the Thanksgiving for?
Thanking God.
Thanking God. These were militiamen. These were the Massachusetts militiamen first celebrated what the white man called Thanksgiving. After a massacre, a genocidal massacre, in the nighttime of about 700 Indians and a lot of them women and children. Where's that teaching that in school? Where's that in your history books?
Right.
Where's that in your elementary schools? Where's that in your middle schools? Is there a note on the side of that too? A handwritten note on that? Or no? Or just read on down? Or is it?
It's kind of it just says the first Thanksgiving.
Okay, what day was that?
May 26th.
Now keep in mind, the first Thanksgiving was when?
In May.
May 26th.
What month are we in right now?
We're in November.
Man, this ain't what the historians. They're not writing this accurately. The third month or the third week, Thursday of the month has nothing to do with the real Thanksgiving in history. The real Thanksgiving in history was May what?
May 26th.
Was May 26th. What year? 1636. 1636. May 26, 1636. That's the first year. That's the first Thanksgiving. That's what they concluded as Thanksgiving. Ain't got nothing to do with no damn November 23rd. Nothing. Has nothing to do with no damn Thursday.
6 months off.
Yeah. Read on.
A day of Thanksgiving.
Oh, that's the Thanksgiving when these militiamen genocidally and brutally killed. They clubbed and shot to death innocent victims.
Burned alive.
And burned the rest alive. Read on.
A day of Thanksgiving, thanking God that they had eliminated over 700 men, women, and children.
Now, Deuteronomy 28 says what? He said, we thank God. That's what Thanksgiving is about. That we killed over 700 men, women, and children. They thanking God for this. Golly, man. Deuteronomy 28. Give me verse 49.
Deuteronomy 28 and verse 49. The Lord shall bring a nation against thee from far.
Yeah, man, that's what the Most High said. He promised it, man. The Most High said, I'm going to bring a nation from far. Go ahead.
From the end of the earth.
Go ahead.
As swift as the eagle flies.
He said, and just to give you a clue, he said his symbol is going to be the what?
Eagle.
The Most High, it's not the only place. Go to Jeremiah chapter 5, verse 15. The Most High is sending a message when he's telling you these things. It's no coincidence. Just like the white man, by no coincidence, puts an Indian head and a buffalo on a coin, and it's by no coincidence, the Most High tells you in advance the nature of this people that I'm bringing to you to destroy you. They love the embody the symbol of the eagle. Go ahead.
Jeremiah chapter 5 verse 15. Lo, I will bring a nation upon you from afar.
Go ahead.
O house of Israel.
Oh, he's talking to who?
Israel.
House of Israel.
The children of Israel. Read on.
Saith the Lord, it is a mighty nation. It is an ancient nation.
He said it's an old nation. He said they've been doing this since they were called the Greeks. They've been doing this since they were called the Romans. This is an old nation. They've been doing this as Esau. They've been your enemy for a long time. Read on.
And a nation whose language thou knowest not.
This is why you're not gonna. They're gonna put boarding schools, Indian schools, to get you to switch to their language, and you gotta learn English. You gotta learn French. You gotta learn Spanish. And you only get a broken form of Portuguese, French, and Spanish. You get a broken form of it, Ebonics, so to speak, because it's not your language. Read on.
Neither understandest what they say.
And you don't understand what the hell they talking about. Read on.
Their quiver is as an open sepulture.
It says when they open their quiver, meaning when they shoot at you with their arrow, it's like death, man. Everywhere they come, it's death. Has that not been what we've been reading? Wherever they land, people die. People get massacred. Land grabs, people get stolen, shipped off in slavery. Men, women, and children. What else you got?
They are almighty men.
Yeah. These are militiamen. The militiamen created Thanksgiving. Go ahead.
And they shall eat up thine harvest.
It said they're going to do what?
And they shall eat up thine harvest.
What did the pilgrims do when they got here to America?
Eat up thine harvest.
What did the French do when they got here to America?
Eat up thine harvest.
What did the Spanish do when they got here to America?
Eat up thine harvest.
What did the English, whether it's the English Puritan, the Protestant, what did they do when they got to America?
Eat up thine harvest.
Go ahead.
And thy bread.
And they forced your bread to be taken. 1608 they was doing that. We're gonna force you to give us our corn. Read on.
Which thy sons and thy daughters should eat.
Yeah, they're supposed to be going to your kids. We're gonna take what belongs to you. Let that go. Finish that in Deuteronomy.
Deuteronomy 28 and verse 49 from the top. The Lord shall bring a nation against thee from far, from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle fly, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand.
So he's telling you what nation he's going to use. They all have the symbol of the eagle, whether it's the Roman eagle, the Greek eagle. Yeah, go ahead. You got it. You got it. You pull it out. Yes, sir.
You want to hold the other side?
Yeah. You got it? Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. So if you put it up closer so they can see it. Yeah, put it up closer. He said these are all the emblems. I can't see it, so y'all got to break it down. These are all the emblems of the so-called Edomite nations. These are different manifestations of his power.
So you have the Nazi eagle, which is German.
Mm-hmm.
You have the I believe right here this is the Roman eagle, right? Then you have, of course, the German eagle, right? The double-headed eagle, the German symbol.
Yeah.
Now this right here, I don't know what that symbol is. It looks Greek. I could be wrong. I'm not gonna say that. But and then you have right here a coat of arms of all the European nations, and there's a lot of eagles here. It's a coat of arms. There's a lot of eagles in these coats of arms. So you're dealing, once again, it's a double-headed eagle. So you're dealing with the bird of prey, the eagle, as the national symbol of the so-called European, which is Esau according to scriptures. And this is how you know their handiwork. Every single nation will have the same symbology. So this is how you know the Bible is true, because you can read the scriptures and then look in the secular world, and you can see this in history.
Right. There you go. You good with that, my one? So finish that verse.
That was in the verse 150?
Yeah.
Deuteronomy 28, verse 50. A nation of fierce countenance.
He said a nation of what?
Fierce countenance.
Meaning they don't, when they come, they're not really trying to make peace with you. They're not trying to really restore peace or have peace, share. He said their objective is to dominate, rule, control, pillage, and murder. Like John 10 and 10. Somebody give me John 10 and 10.
John 10 and verse 10. The thief cometh not.
It says the thief cometh not but to what?
But for to steal.
He's going to try to steal it from you first, because he don't want to pay for it. If he can't steal it from you, then he's going to do what?
And to kill.
He'll kill you for it if he can't steal it from you. Then if you're too strong to kill, then he'll do what?
And to destroy.
He'll burn it down because if you can't have it, he can't have it. That's the nature of the man that the Most High has put against us as a nation of people. The so-called Negroes, Hispanics, black and Hispanic, of Negro and Indian descent, scattered throughout North, Central, and South America. This is the type of enemy the Most High sent against us. He gonna steal it, kill you for it, or destroy it. If he can't have it, you can't have it. Many times, we just didn't bring it up. Many times you read historically that if they couldn't take your crops, it was a story that of one little kid who allegedly stole a silver cup. So they raided his village with about 4 armed men, couldn't find the cup, so they killed people that they saw, and then they burned all their corn up. Or a little cup.
Sounds like them, huh?
Yeah, bro. Crazy, bro. Yep. Go ahead, let that go. Go back to finish that in Deuteronomy until we come back to this finish this Thanksgiving joint.
God, a nation of fierce countenance, which shall not regard the person of old.
He said, they don't care how old you are. Did these settlers care how old the natives were when they got here? No. The aged men, read on.
Nor show favor to the young.
Neither do they. They don't care how young they are. Men, women, and children were being clubbed to death or shot to death.
6 or 86.
Read on.
And he shall eat the fruit of thy cattle.
And he's going to do what?
Eat the fruit of thy cattle.
Has not this what we've been reading about the whole time? Read on.
And the fruit of thy land.
And he's going to enjoy your land and take your land and then call your name his name. Let that go and finish this in Thanksgiving. That history writings.
Come. Connecticut colony established.
And all of a sudden, after you eliminate the natives, then you establish a colony and you call it what? Connecticut. After you kill them off, you take their land and you set up yours. You set up your establishment.
And that was the whole goal in the first place.
That was the goal to begin with. What's the last one, right?
Mission accomplished.
Mission accomplished. Read on.
Connecticut colony, coat of arms of Connecticut.
Go ahead.
Governor John Hayes of the Massachusetts Bay Colony.
He's a militiaman. Go ahead.
Leads 100 people to Hartford in 1636.
Go ahead.
He and Puritan minister Thomas Hooker are primary founders of the Connecticut colony.
All right, what else you got? Last one.
1637.
Now, 1637. Now, we know the first Thanksgiving that they call it a Thanksgiving because they thank the Lord for allowing them to kill 700 men, women, and children. They partied after that. Well, they weren't done yet. When you actually read the history of Thanksgiving, there's 2 Thanksgivings. Let's read about the other one.
Thanksgiving Day Massacres. On June 5th.
June 5th when?
1637.
1 year after May 26th, 1636. You had same summer, next summer, the following summer, June what?
June 5th, 1637.
What happened?
On June 5th, Captain Mason attacks a Pequot village near present-day Stonington and massacres the community.
Man.
Following a special successful raid.
He says following a special successful raid. Go ahead.
Against the Pequot in now
Same tribe.
In what is now Stamford, Connecticut.
In what is now what?
Stamford, Connecticut.
And I be hearing about they built establishments
for University.
Killing grounds, bro.
Yeah. These monumental moments in history.
They established their
Name prestigious colleges after.
Yeah, right where Stanford University sits.
Harvard
or
University.
Harvard University
is in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Man, what's the secret behind these places, man? These you're sitting on land that's full of blood. Read on.
The churches announced a second day of Thanksgiving.
Oh, we got another Thanksgiving. The church announces a second day of Thanksgiving.
Wow. A year later.
A year later. Read on.
To celebrate victory.
Come on, bro.
Reportedly, during the feasting, the hacked off heads of natives.
The who?
The hacked off heads of natives.
During the feasting, the hacked off heads of natives, go ahead,
are kicked through the streets like soccer balls.
Oh, where do you get that? What's that called now? It's football, bro.
Oh, football.
Yes, it's the football, bro. That's what the kickoff is for. That's what football is for. That's why the Cowboys are against the Indians in football tomorrow, because it's going to celebrate those heads, just like they're going to kick that football off. That's symbolic of them heads that they kicked off in 1637.
Because they preserve their history.
They preserve their history. It's just hidden in your eyes. Man, if you celebrate Thanksgiving again after this class, you got problems.
Yeah, for real.
Wow. You got problems.
Just gonna do it because they fast the only time their family come together.
That ain't no damn excuse.
No.
That ain't no excuse, bro. You doing that after you understand what it's about. The university decided in 1972 that any and all Stanford University use of the Indian symbol should be immediately disavowed and permanently stopped. And every year since then, the administration has reaffirmed its commitment, saying simply, the mascot issue is not up for a vote. This is the reason why they don't have a mascot, because they used to use the Indian head for Stanford University. But they understand that it was about using that Indian head in celebration of cutting those heads off for the Pequot Indians during that time and kick their heads around like a soccer ball. This is American history that you will never hear. Read on.
On July 28th, a third attack and massacre occurs near present-day Fairfield.
23 days later, a third attack near Fairfield, Connecticut. Go ahead.
And the Pequot War comes to an end.
Now they just gave up. That's it. What else you got? That's it? Go ahead and finish it.
The day after the massacre, William Bradford, the governor of Massachusetts Bay Colony.
Now keep in mind, William Bradford was one of the original colonists that came from the Puritans that came from England. He was appointed governor over here in the new colonies. He was one of the original founders with this utopian society that he was trying to create. He was celebrating. He became governor, one of the original settlers of America. Read on.
William Bradford, the governor of Massachusetts Bay Colony, writes that from that day forth shall be a day of celebration and thanksgiving for subduing the Pequot, and for the next 100 years, every Thanksgiving day ordained by a governor was in honor of the bloody victory.
Damn. So now they know historically why they celebrate Thanksgiving. You don't know why you celebrate Thanksgiving, but they understand why it's a national holiday, and they know all the bloody details behind it.
Yeah.
So the next time you consider sitting down thanking the Most High over some damn Thanksgiving dinner, understand what you're celebrating. You're celebrating the demise and torture and decimation of your people.
Celebrating Deuteronomy 28.
You celebrating Deuteronomy 28?
I had a scripture for how they just shed blood over the land and still did build it on it.
Go ahead.
Numbers.
You got to read louder.
Numbers 35 and 33.
Go ahead.
It says, so ye shall not pollute the land wherein ye are, for blood it defileth the land.
Right.
And the land cannot be cleansed of the blood that is shed therein, unless by the blood of him that shed it.
Right. The only way to clean America up is to kill off the man that brought blood shed to America by the masses. That's the only way to clean the blood of America. It's got to be cleaned by their blood. And that's law. All right, with that, we're going to go ahead and say shalom. The water for checking us out and paying attention to this Thanksgiving Eve and understanding what we're about to go into tomorrow, what America's about to go into tomorrow, not us. Right. And why they're going into it. Because this is about the celebration of their victories and their so-called heroes. And of their victories over our people, over our fellow brother, the so-called Native American, which we know is Gad in the scriptures. So we implore that all those that know they're the true Jews, the true Israelites of the Most High, and the Most High's people, spread this word, spread this class, spread this gospel. Understand why the Most High brought this against us, though. He said because we sinned, the Most High was going to bring a nation that didn't give a damn about us, whose language we weren't going to understand, they weren't going to have no mercy on the young or the old. They was going to take our crops, take our animals, take our women, take our houses, and we were going to reap none of the benefits. And they were going to be the head, and we were going to be the tail. All this is prophesied in Deuteronomy 28, also in Leviticus 26. So this is something that we got to hold on to and understand why the Most High hate these damn holidays and why we should too. They ain't got nothing to do with us. But they have everything to do with our demise. But not our victories. We're not going to celebrate our losses, man. You know what I'm saying? So with that, we're going to go ahead and say shalom.
Shalom.
Shalom.